Good evening. Welcome to Capitola City Council regularly scheduled meeting, Thursday, May 28th. May I have a roll call, please?
Oh. Councilmember Clark?
Here.
Councilmember Orbach?
Here.
Councilmember Westman?
Here.
Vice Mayor Jensen?
Here.
And Mayor Morgan?
Here. Would you all please join in the Pledge of Allegiance? Great, thank you. Are there any additions or deletions?
Staff has no changes to the agenda this evening.
Great. And additional materials?
Staff did receive additional materials for items 6A, 7A, and 7B. There were 2 emails for 6A, 7 emails for 7A, and 3 emails for 7B. All are available for public review in the back of the room and online on our agenda packet.
Great, thank you. That'll bring us to oral communications by members of the public. So this can be on anything that's not agendized this evening. I just want to make a note that since we are doing our first districting hearing this evening, we have to put a hard start on it, which is at 6:15. So please feel free to make your comments, but we may have to push some to the end if we get too close. So just a heads up. Welcome.
Thank you, City Council members, for allowing me this evening to raise a troubling trend that I'm observing by the Capitola City Manager and Department Head. As a member of the Finance Advisory Committee, it's come to my attention that the Parks and Rec Department has requested not only a $10,000 budget for plein air, but in the last 2 weeks increased that budget request to $20,000. With a very tight 26-27 budget, in fact, the City Council giving up over $10,000 of valuable training over the next year for other budget items, this concerns me. The reason is that the Plein Air Festival was initially started by the Arts and Cultural Commission 11 years ago and administered by a subcommittee at that commission at no cost to the city. A few years later, the city did assign a staff member at a partial number of hours to assist and ensure city compliance by the commission subcommittee. This approach 2 years ago, after Jamie formed the new Parks and Rec Department, Nikki was placed in charge. Shortly after that, all the volunteers were told their assistance was no longer needed for this event, and the festival would be run and managed by the city staff. Why? A no-cost public awareness festival has now transitioned from zero cost to a request for $20,000. Additionally, the city staff has actively discouraged volunteer assistance from the Art and Cultural Commission. Again, I have to ask the question, why? More importantly, what's happening in Capitola when appointed city officials are actively discouraging its own citizens who volunteer to make Capitola a better place to live? So I'll leave it to the city council members to determine why this new policy of discouraging volunteer assistance at no cost to the city is occurring. I do recommend rejecting this request in the 2026-27 budget. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Rick Moran, and I live in Ben Lomond. But in the 1970s, I used to live on 421 Riverview Avenue, not too far from Reggie, along the banks of the Soquel Creek. During that time, I developed a strong appreciation for Capitola, which I still have today. I'm here today to ask the City Council to make it a top priority to continue to honor Harry Hooper and return the plaque onto the Capitola Wharf. We should continue to recognize Harry Hooper's contribution to both Capitola and to baseball. Harry's family will be gathering at their Capitola home in early July, and it would be appropriate if Harry's family could visit his plaque and remember the man they called Pop. On a personal note, I am a lifelong Boston Red Sox fan. And one of my most cherished pieces of memorabilia I have is the copy of the front page of the Boston Globe dated September 11th, 1918. And that reads, Sox win championship. And right on the top-hand corner right there is Harry Hooper, leadoff batter, playing right field. It's time to return Harry's plaque to its rightful place of honor on the side of the wharf overlooking Cooper Beach. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Hello, my name is Tiffany. I just wanted to make a comment regarding a meeting I was at a couple of months ago. There was some lengthy discussion about how many times a person can get involved and communicate directly with City Council. There's opportunity to email, there's opportunity to speak at meetings, there's all these things. It's very transparent. And I'm here to say I disagree with that. I personally have been sending emails and there have been no replies. And depending on what's being decided, we don't get to hear any of the discussions. We don't know why decisions are being made. And if that leaves a person in our community as their only option to file a lawsuit against the city, I think that's fair. And I don't think it's fair for you to ask us not to do that when we don't feel like we've been heard. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is, oh my God, Megan Range. I got real close. I am the new PG&E Government Relations rep for this area, so I just wanted to drop in, say hi. I'll follow up with everybody individually, set up meetings. City Manager, I'm looking at you, just to make sure you all have my contact information. I know you've got projects going on in the area. I look forward to working together. I technically live in Monterey. I have family in Capitola, so I'm actually headed to dinner now, but wanted to say hi before I moved on. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi,
You're welcome.
my name is Donna Hooper Danza. My grandpa is the baseball player that had a plaque at the front of the wharf for years. And we went to the opening of the wharf and we're like, what happened to it? So we're thrilled with what you did with the new wharf, but we're very much hoping as a family that you can put that lovely plaque that was made to commemorate my grandpa back up on the wharf, be on the side there where Cooper Beach is. He was a wonderful man. He had an extraordinary professional baseball career, but he never forgot the city of Capitola, which he loved. He raised his family here. This is where my dad was raised, and we were raised just up the street outside the city limits here. So, but it's been a wonderful experience being involved in Capitola. Lots of grandkids to follow here that I've got. So we're hoping that it can be returned to its special spot somewhere on the wharf. And he was always, you should probably know too, he went far beyond once he retired from the baseball world. He came back to Capitola and continued on. He was a very strong believer in civic duty and did a lot of things with and for the city of Capitola. So thank you.
Thank
Nice
you.
to see you all. Bye.
Hey. Hi, we too love Capitola and the Red Sox. My name is Chris Moran, and I grew up here attending Soquel Elementary, Capitola Grade School, Soquel High, Cabrillo, and San Jose State. And in the 70s, I lived on Soquel Creek across from the Shadowbrook restaurant. In 1976, we borrowed rowboats and a canoe from our neighbors and paddled down the creek. And we walked to Hooper's Beach, where we got married. That guy. Afterwards, we played baseball at Jade Street Park and celebrated at the Shadowbrook. That was 50 years ago in July. Hooper's Beach is a really special place. Harry Hooper donated the parking area above this beach to the city of Capitola and then donated the beach itself, which he owned. A plaque honoring Hooper graced the front of the Capitola Wharf for many years. But when the storm broke our wharf in half, the plaque was taken down for safekeeping, but it hasn't been restored to its rightful place. I hope Harry's not going to be forgotten. He's really worth remembering. He was born in Bell Station, California, an old stage route near Pacheco Pass. He earned a degree in engineering from St. Mary's College, but baseball drew him to the Boston Red Sox, where he played with Babe Ruth and was part of what they called the $1 Million Outfield. He helped win 4 World Series titles. For his outstanding athleticism, he was inducted into the Baseball Hall of Fame in 1971. After an outstanding career with the Red Sox, his heart drew him to Capitola, where his family lives today. He was the Capitola postmaster for 20 years and lived here until he passed away in 1974. Though I didn't know it at the time, I went to school with his granddaughter at Soquel High. From a Capitola newsletter in 2014, the Capitola Historical Museum held a grand opening celebration and the exhibition called Take Me Out to Capitola, The Life and Times of Harry Hooper, quote, to commemorate a Hall of Fame baseball player who lived in Capitola for almost 60 years and played a major role in the community's development. The event was hosted by historian Frank Perry. There was also a walking tour called Harry Hooper's Capitola. As my husband and I celebrate our golden anniversary in July, we envisioned our photo being taken beside the plaque of Harry Hooper, where we got married so very long ago. Harry Hooper is woven into the history of Capitola, should be honored and remembered, and his plaque restored. He loved Capitola, and we love him back. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Hi, welcome.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Paula Bradley. I'm concerned that the council is making decisions that are not improving safety for bicyclists and pedestrians. The decisions at the last 2 meetings to reject the safety and circulation for the roundabout improvement, well supported by the Bay Ave corridor study, and lose the $700,000 tip money. The last-ditch plan that was mentioned at the last meeting might be heroic to recover the transportation funds that are subject to being lost, and ask the RTC to allow the city to spend those funds on other projects that have not been approved or awarded funds. There are rules. There's no guarantee it's going to go that way. Some people are really excited. They think it was a big success. That $200,000 might be used for a trestle study instead of transportation improvements in Capitola. This action means that after 2 years, there will be no improvements except a couple of Band-Aids on Bay Ave, the lighted crosswalk, and some other lighting. So $50,000 of that will be used instead of $500, I think it was. Although many vocal and influential residents rejected the traffic safety solution, the council still has to stand up and support good decisions and fiscal responsibility. Some residents may be more visible and exemplary citizens, but they don't represent everyone. I haven't lived here for 50 years. I'm not a legacy Capitolan. I don't have wonderful history to share like some other people were speaking of, which is really great to hear about that. So last year, the council also rejected the safety improvements for the Park Avenue separated Superior bike lane, and those funds were lost that were funded for the improvements from the RTC active transportation funds. So I'm just expressing my concern. There's an item later tonight that I'm excited to hear about the improvements. Thank you.
Great, thank you. All right. Seeing no other comments, that brings us right on time. So we will circle back with staff and council comments in the consent calendar after item 7A. Okay, 6:15, thank you. Transitioning to districts. This is our first public hearing.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. To kick off our presentation, I just wanted to quickly go back and kind of discuss where we started. So the recommended action this evening is to first adopt a resolution updating the timeline for the transition to districts, and then conduct a public hearing to discuss the transition, receive community input, and the council will have the opportunity to discuss and provide direction on the composition or number of voting districts. Though direction is not required this evening, it is recommended that it's given by the end of the second public hearing, which is scheduled for June 11th. So as a quick refresher, we received a letter alleging a violation of the California Voting Rights Act back in March. And then in April, we adopted a resolution of intent to transition to districts, and we hired National Demographics Corporation as our demographer. We launched a public website with several subpages, including a question and answer page, a public mapping tool. The city also sent out a mailer to Capitola residents. It should be hitting your mailboxes if it hasn't already within the next day or so. And then on May 14th, we had an informational item at our city council meeting to go over the transition, though that was not part of the formal public hearing process. I'm pleased to be able to share that the city did receive a 30-day extension to the original timeline. So we are proposing to update the timeline in tonight's action to move forward. And so again, tonight is the first official public hearing to receive input on district composition. The next public hearing is scheduled for June 11th. At these meetings, we're really looking for resident input and council discussion on the number of districts requested before maps are drawn. I'm really pleased to share that the city has received a number of public submissions, which are available for review on our website. However, up until the next phase of the process, the city council can't really discuss maps until after that second public hearing has been held. Following that June 11th meeting, the city will publish the first official maps drawn by the demographer for feedback. Staff is also proposing to include, thanks to the additional 30-day extension, a community outreach meeting on Saturday, June 20th to obtain public input. This would not be a city council meeting. It would be really focused on trying to generate more public outreach in a different method than we've done so far. And then we would hold 2 more public hearings at city council meetings. Those are scheduled for June 25th and then the new date of July 23rd. And then the final maps would be adopted on August 25th at that city council meeting, which brings us right to our deadline of August 27th, which is the new deadline with the extension. So on June 11th, our second public hearing, at this point, this will be our 3rd time talking about districting in a public setting. The council will have received this presentation for another time. I'm sure you guys are loving every minute, but staff did want to propose a potential change to the format to try and engage the public in a different way. And so we're really trying to capture some more input or answer any potential questions from the public. So what staff is proposing is at our June 11th meeting to host a public question and answer portion during the meeting as a part of our item presentation. So this would be our second official public hearing, but the last meeting before we talk about maps. So it's kind of the last chance to answer questions from the public and address them right away. So we would recommend or propose that questions are asked during public comment, and then staff be provided an opportunity to answer with the demographer. And if there's a second round of questions necessary, we can definitely work with that. Again, it's just to allow for a more interactive process to kind of change things up, because again, it will be the 3rd time receiving the presentation. If council thinks that this is a good idea, we can move forward with promoting it in advance through our website and social media to make sure that the public has an opportunity to hear about it. Staff is also proposing, as a part of our updated timeline, an outreach meeting on June 20th. This is a Saturday. The time is proposed at 11 a.m. While we are seeing really good engagement so far through our council meetings, sometimes midweek or evening or in-person meetings can be a barrier to access to other members of Capitola's population. And so we're trying to target a different audience by selecting a different day and time where we can kind of capture people's attention. Anecdotally, we do track outreach and engagement through social media. For example, Facebook provides data and statistics on when people are active on social media, and we do see that there's a lot of activity mid-mornings on weekends. And so sometimes we can target that activity when we're posting on certain times. And so this time does kind of capture that audience that's already on the internet on the mornings over the weekends. So we're hoping to kind of distract them from social media and bring them over to districting. This is a web-based option because, again, sometimes in-person is not accessible to everybody. And so this would provide a web-based option to allow people to join from home. It also allows the meeting to be recorded, so we'd have a video of the meeting to share after the fact, and it would also allow translation services to be used in real time. In total, the city will offer 6 in-person opportunities for input through the districting process and 1 virtual opportunity if the council approves this plan. So to recap, this is kind of our total meeting timeline for the districting process. You'll see right in the middle is when maps come out. So we're almost there, not quite, but we have 1 more in-person public hearing. We'll release the maps. We will have that proposed outreach meeting. Then we will have a council meeting to discuss maps for the first time publicly. The other great thing about having that outreach meeting before the council meeting is we can kind of capture some public input on the maps before we present that to the council, and we can incorporate that into the presentation. Then we'll have a 4th public hearing on July 23rd, and then the final hearing on August 27th. So with that, the outreach meeting would be promoted in advance. We would probably advertise it website, social media, so other outreach. We include it on our second mailer, which will be going out around the time that maps are released. We are going to advertise that participants can submit questions in advance and or attend and ask questions in real time, since it would be an interactive format through the webinar. And then, like I said, it allows us to capture some public input in advance of the first map discussion, so we can include that into our presentation for council. This virtual meeting remains in our project budget that we originally had approved. We had the extra funds for a virtual meeting, but not an in-person meeting. So we have done a lot of public outreach so far. I've mentioned some of them, but just to recap, we have the website where you can find general districting information, the public mapping tools, which have already been used by our members of our community. We have the question and comment function where people can submit questions or map submissions. Maps are available for public review on our website through a separate subpage. We have a couple of FAQ documents, and we will continue to create more when we get those public input. Like, for example, if we were to get questions at the next meeting, we could create a document based on that question and answer portion. We have a dedicated email address where people can contact us with districting questions or comments or maps. And then we sent 1 of 2 direct mailers to the residents of Capitola. So that concludes my portion of the presentation. I'm going to turn it over to our demographer to provide you with some additional information. But just to recap, the recommended action this evening is to adopt a resolution updating the timeline, and then conduct our public hearing to receive community input on the transition to districts and discuss or provide direction on the composition. With that, I'll turn it over to Doug.
Good evening. Pleasure to be back with you again. As you just heard, most of what you'll see tonight is essentially the same information I went over last time, so I'll go through it a little faster, but be sure to touch on each item. I'm happy to come back and talk in more detail about any of it if there are questions. First of all, just to frame this for the audience, at the big picture, all this impacts is, sorry, I'm going to do that without feedback. All this impacts is how the council is elected. It doesn't impact your day-to-day operations or anything like that. But the 3 systems that are out there are your current system, citywide, or what we call at-large elections. There are a couple of cities that use what we call from district or residence district systems, but there were only 4 or 5, 20 years ago, and now there are fewer because under the law, those are considered at large. Those are not any protection from a challenge. And so what this California Voting Rights Act is really aims to do is to push everyone into by-district elections. So, go to the next slide. So really what the California Voting Rights Act does is it takes the federal Voting Rights Act and makes it easier to bring a challenge. And this is, many of you have heard about the Louisiana Calais decision last month. This is pre-Calais. We don't really yet know how Calais will impact the California law. But pre-Calais, there were 4 tests that you had to fail. You had to fail all 4 of them before a federal case could be brought against you. What California did is they eliminated 2 of those tests. And so they made it really just a statistical analysis determined guilt or innocence for a city, which made it much, much easier for plaintiffs to bring challenges. And again, this is all a little bit up in the air, but that's where things stood as of April before the decision, and we don't really know where things stand now. Go to the next slide. Because it made it easier for plaintiffs to bring challenges, we saw a huge change. So you can see the numbers there. By our count, we're aware of 345 school districts that changed, including Santa Cruz, changed because of a California Voting Rights Act concern. 46 community college districts, 212 cities. And just to put this all in context, before the California Voting Rights Act took effect, there were only 29 cities in California that had districts. So we started with 29 under federal law, and now we've added another 212. So you can see the scale of change this has brought to the state. 1 county board of supervisors, only 1 because the 57 others were already by district. So San Mateo was the last holdout. They got sued, they lost, and had to go to districts. And now we're seeing more and more of this at the special district level. So we worked with Central Fire. We just finished working with the Watsonville Hospital District, Pajaro Valley Water. So we're seeing these challenges being brought more and more to special districts as well. And it's not that these 600 plus jurisdictions were violating anyone's voting rights or violating anyone's civil rights. It was the threat of a challenge and the cost involved in a challenge that's led to this huge scale change. So you got some numbers there about different cases. The big number that's out there is Santa Monica, who just passed 10 years of litigation, and they have spent somewhere around $10 to $12 million on their defense so far. And that's just on their defense. And on the right, you can see some of the settlements paid to the plaintiffs when jurisdictions fought, and so far, no one has lost. Santa Monica is still in court, and Huntington Beach has had their trial, and they're awaiting the trial court judge's ruling sometime probably mid to late summer in that case. But so far, no one has won any of the cases, so we don't really have a path to know what it takes to win. Next slide. So that's a little bit of background on the law and the scale of change. And I should note, as has already come up and will continue to come up as people draw maps, it's hard to draw districts in a really small jurisdiction like this, but you're not alone. What was it? We've worked with Solvang, Big Bear City. We've worked with a number of small jurisdictions. The plaintiffs' attorneys have brought challenges to cities of all sizes. We've even worked with school districts that had less than 1,000 voters in them. But the fees and the financial penalties are the same regardless of your size. And that's why everyone gets hit and makes a change. So the city clerk just walked through the timeline a bit. I won't go through all the details again. The key thing to note is that there's a weird deadline in this process. So in order for full transparency and for residents to have full time to review maps, the maps have to be posted 7 days before council considers them or discusses them. And note that that's not maps have to be received 7 days before, it's that they have to be posted. And so we do ask residents to submit their maps 10 days before the hearing so that we have time to process it, post it, and get it up. Nothing's worse than submitting a map, going to the next council meeting and not seeing your map at that meeting. So that's why for each hearing, we need the maps 10 days before. So for the June 25th hearing, we have the deadline posted there of June 15th by the end of the day to send your maps in. And then again for the July hearing, 10 days before that, we'd like to get people's maps. So that's the only key thing to add in there for residents to be aware of. They'll hear that the maps will be posted a week in advance. And often people think, oh, I sent it in 7 days in advance. No, we have to get it, put it into our computers, generate the report and all that. And we don't want to miss that. So get your maps in 10 days before the hearing, please. We go to the next slide. So there are 2 sets of statutory rules. In the far left, you see the federal rules. We have equal population, which is tricky. And it's fun to see some of the comments from your residents as they get in and have already started playing with the maps of how hard it is to get the population in those ranges when you're in such a small jurisdiction. And then compliance with the Federal Voting Rights Act and no racial gerrymandering. Not really a factor here, for reasons I'll talk about in a moment. We're not very worried about maps violating either of those rules. Then there's the state criteria. So in priority order under the statute, we have the maps have to be contiguous. We have to avoid as much as possible dividing any neighborhoods and communities of interest. I'll come back to what a community of interest is. And then we want to follow easily identifiable boundaries whenever possible. Rivers, railroads, major roads. Make it easy for voters to understand which district they're in and to tell their neighbors which district they're in. And then the last of the state prioritized criteria is be compact. So don't bypass one group of people to get to another group of people unless it's to achieve a higher ranked priority. And then in the top right, you see the California prohibition shall not adopt election district boundaries for the purpose of favoring or discriminating against an incumbent, a political candidate, or a political party. So these are to focus on neighborhoods, communities, and easily identifiable boundaries, not on council members or someone who wants to be a council member. And then if you have 2 or more maps that are equal on all those criteria, then we get into what the courts call other traditional redistricting principles. And in things like that, we can look at if there's going to be an area that's going to grow faster than another, we can underpopulate it a tiny bit. Not really enough to offset any real growth, but that's something to be considered, or any other local concerns that you want to consider. Those can only come after all those statutory considerations. So those are the rules for how to evaluate and choose a map. Go to the next slide. And then going in, there's a lot of data. I won't go through all this data, but sure enough, so residents know for every district in every map, we'll generate all this data. So you get total population numbers, citizen voting age population numbers, which come from the Census Bureau, but not from the 2020 census. They come from what's called the American Community Survey. So they're less precise. Then we have data from the state that's registration and turnout by surname. Again, there's no concentration, as I'll talk about in a moment. So those numbers are not going to vary much from district to district. And then we have the somewhat more interesting ones, the socioeconomic factors on the right. So we can look at, percent immigrant. Where folks tend to focus is renters and owner-occupied housing and single-family housing versus multifamily housing. So we'll show those in a map. But if someone's interested in, is there a district where renters are a majority of the residents, they'll be able to see that from the demographic profiles provided for every single map in every single district. Go to the next slide. And these are that data put into maps. So you can see in the top left, and I talked a lot about the Latino citizen voting age population at the last one. I'll just briefly say, the yellows and reds are the majority areas. And you can see there's very little yellow and red. And where there are reds that are the heavily Latino census blocks, we think they're either mistakes in the census or the result of some privacy disclosure math that the Census Bureau does. For example, the biggest red census block that you see in the middle, that's City Hall. So the odds that there's a large Latino population residing in City Hall, I think you'd be aware of it. So, so that's why when I talk about we're not really worried about maps violating the Federal Voting Rights Act or racial gerrymandering, there just isn't a concentration. The only concentration you have is the one census block over in the west right next to the mall, and that's a whole census block, and so we can't divide that. There's nothing that would be done that would trigger any voting rights review based on one census block. The other data, you can see some of the data shown here. We don't have it as precise. It's not city block by city block. It's what the census calls block groups. So you can kind of see those areas. But again, the blues and purples are low percentages. You can see like renters in the top right. The red is the highest percentage areas. So if folks want to try to put together renters or try to put together households that are more likely to have children under 18 at home or anything like that, they can use all that data. And all that data for all those categories is on the interactive review map that's on the City Clerk's website, beyond just these 3 maps I'm giving as samples here. Go to the next slide. So neighborhoods and communities of interest. These are really the big driving concerns. They're other than just be contiguous, they're the top criterion under the state rules. A neighborhood is really when you see someone else from Capitola and they say, what part of town do you live in? How do you answer? That's really what we're looking for. There's no official answer. There's no right answer. So people might disagree on where the boundaries of a given neighborhood are. That's fine. We welcome all of that input. And if there are two different definitions of a neighborhood, we try to get the whole thing of both areas into one district just to avoid any conflict. That's pretty straightforward, and that is a high priority and top priority. We've already gotten some very good input from a couple of residents now, sharing their thoughts on what are the neighborhoods of Capitola. So, and those are posted with the maps that those folks presented. The next slide, communities of interest is a weirder term. This is a term of art in redistricting. As defined by statute, it's a population that shares a common social or economic interest that benefits from being kept together in a single district. So this could be, the coastal zone because they're worried about sea level rise, and that's their shared issue, and they want the city to address that. It could be a traffic corridor. It could be a commercial area. It could be driven by folks who speak Spanish at home. Any kind of social or economic shared interest that relates to city policy can be a community of interest. Obviously, to try to keep it together in a district, it needs to be geographically defined. And the last part of that that's underlined, some areas feel like they aren't heard. I don't know, I'm speaking generally, not about Capitola, but some areas feel like they're not heard by the council, so they want to be kept together so that they can get a voice at the dais. What I always remind folks is it still takes, even after districts, it still takes 3 votes to get anything done. This isn't like a county supervisor where the supervisors kind of dictate policy in their district. The council is still all things done by majority vote. So if folks feel like they can be heard, it might be better to be divided so that they have 2 representatives on the dais and just need a 3rd vote to get a majority and pass something. If that's the case, then they would not count as a community of interest and we would not be required to keep them together because they don't benefit from being in a single district. So it's a little bit of a weird term of art. The neighborhoods is much easier to wrap your head around, and that tends to be where the focus tends to go. Next slide. As mentioned, we have a variety of tools. I do want to emphasize that these are just empowering tools. There's no requirement to use any of these. But we do have a very simple map review tool that lets you, it's essentially like Google Maps. It's that easy to use. That's just to look at maps, and then you can come in and write an email or come in and talk about which maps you like. Then there's an easy to use draw your neighborhood tool. If you don't worry about population numbers, you don't want to draw a whole district, just here's my neighborhood, keep it together. And then a couple of map drawing tools that we'll show in the next slides. So this is a screenshot of the map review tool. You can see there are population units that we drew. Those are for the paper tool. I'll talk about it in a minute. But if you go to the website now, you'll see there are more layers than what's included here because the maps that are coming in are being added there. And so you can turn, it's a little weird, but to the right of the layer name is a little icon. It's supposed to be an eyeball. And so you click the eyeball to see that layer, you unclick it to make it disappear. And so now if you go in, you'll see the maps there and all that socioeconomic data. This is the Draw Your Neighborhood tool. Again, it's a PDF on the website, or if you don't want to print it from home, just come by the clerk's office and they'll hand it to you. But this is really simple. Just show us where your neighborhood is, and then when we're drawing maps and when the council's evaluating maps, you can see, did we keep that neighborhood together? Next slide. This is the same paper map, but with those population units on it. You can see it's circled in red on the left side there. Each of the units, it says a population number. So folks, and we already have seen folks doing this, they can draw a line around it and add the numbers up themselves and submit a map that is population balanced. It's hard to do. Getting those numbers just right is tricky. So my respect for those that are already leaping into it. But this is all it takes. You don't have to use a computer to draw a map. You can use this to draw your own map just using a piece of paper that, again, the clerk can give you if you don't want to print it off the website. Next slide. This is the more tricky one. The online map drawing tool lets you go in city block by city block. The same data that I'm using, they have in this tool to really fine-tune maps. It does take a little bit of learning. There's a little 4-minute video of how to use it. You watch that and you'll be an expert. And then it's really just a paintbrush. You paint in which city blocks go into District 1, And over in the top left, you can see the colors. And pick the next color, paint in District 2, and it gives you a running total on the numbers. So it gives you those demographics. And down in the bottom left, you can turn on streets, topographical options, things like that to see details as well. But this is really, if you want to get into it and really fine tune your maps to be exactly where you want to go. I will say there are a couple of census blocks from the census that are weird shaped. They run along the railroad or along a river. And we're already seeing people running into those that are a bit of a pain. The challenge is the Census Bureau only gives us data. It only gives us population counts for whole blocks. And so it gets very, very tricky and complicated and legally risky if we start dividing them. And so they do provide a challenge as we're drawing these things, unfortunately. But this tool lets people really get into it and fine tune it. And we already are getting maps, which is great to see. So I will note before I move on to the question of 4 versus 5, which is the last part of this, those that have gone on the website, we've received 9 maps. Some are 4 districts, some are 5 districts, which is great to see people diving in. Also on the website is a list of who submitted each map. I'm thrilled to see people diving in. I do want to assure people that look at the 4 district maps. There are 5. 4 of them are very, very similar. That doesn't mean that's right. It just means one person drew all 4. So people should not go through their maps and say, oh, there seems to be a consensus around this map. We're not looking for quantity of input here. We're looking for, it doesn't matter if we get 3 or 4 maps from one person or just one. Ultimately, the residents and the council are looking to pick one good map. So that I do want to encourage people, feel free to go crazy with 4. Don't feel like there's already consensus, even though I love that someone's really getting into the tool. So the question, as you heard earlier, that we would ask for early direction. It's not required, but we do ask for the council, if you're ready to give direction now or after the next hearing about if you prefer 4 districts with a citywide mayor or 5 districts. The reason we ask for this early is because this is a big decision. And 2 things come if we wait until the very end. One is that half the maps drawn by residents get tossed because they have the wrong number of districts, not because they're good or bad maps. So it's better to give people notice ahead of time of what number of districts to focus on. The other is that if we don't answer it until the end, all the public comments will focus on 4 versus 5. We won't get detailed, good commentary on which maps are better than other maps because this big picture question will dominate the discussion. So that's why we're asking for direction early. Again, it's not required, but in our experience, it has helped if you're ready to give that direction, if we can get that tonight or after the next hearing. So we jump in. The current system, you're at large, as I mentioned. Voters vote for all 5 council members, and each year the mayor rotates. The council chooses someone to be mayor for the coming year. It's commonly referred to as the rotating mayor system. The alternative is to have a citywide elected mayor. So we'd have 4 districts, and then separately on the ballot would be an election for mayor, either every 2 years or every 4 years. So it would be listed as an entirely separate office. There'd be no rotation going on. I should note, this doesn't make a strong mayor. There's no real change in the powers of the mayor. It just means that one person sits in the dais and has the title mayor for the entire term rather than that rotating. So if folks hear about a strong mayor in San Francisco or a strong mayor in LA, that's not what this is looking at. This is simply, does the post rotate or is someone elected to that post and stay in it for their term? So next slide's fine. I went through the next slides in detail last time. I won't spend as much time repeating the same points, but there are different things that come out of this. And we as the demographers who've been through this a lot don't have a position or recommendation. What we're doing is summarizing comments that have come out of this when we've heard this debate before. There is no right or wrong answer here, is the emphasis. So 5 districts, it's interesting that this actually came from a council member who pointed out that it can encourage respect and cooperation among council members because council members tend to be more cooperative with the mayor if they're going to be mayor next or think they might be mayor in 2 years. So as opposed to if there's a mayor there and a council member disagrees, they might be more likely to fight if there's no chance of being mayor themselves. On the other hand, you can see the other points here listed below as well. On the other hand, a citywide mayor can provide a more consistent leadership tone and a more prominent community leader to appear, especially to appear to regional bodies or to Sacramento kind of thing. We go to the next slide. The other big change is the average population per district. This is often a key focus in smaller jurisdictions, is just how small these districts end up being. I mentioned they have to be equal in total population. So for 4 districts, we're at just under 2,500 per district. For 5 districts, that goes down to just under 2,000. And then when we look at how many ballots are being cast, we're down to 1,400 with 4 districts, or about 1,100 for 5 districts in a presidential election, even fewer. So if you split up that number of votes cast among 4 or 5 candidates running, you get down to council members being elected with just a few hundred votes. So that's a problem in a small jurisdiction either way, but it's a bigger problem with 5 districts than it would be with 4 districts. We go to the next slide. There's also obviously impacts on the voters and on council members. A variety of issues come up, both good and bad on both fronts. When you're elected by district but have the opportunity to rotate in the mayor's post, well, then you get more exposure to citywide issues. You meet with people from all over the city more often. That's a big benefit in medium and large size cities. Capitola, it's a small benefit because no matter if you're a district or at large, the city is so small, you're going to know what's going on everywhere. But it is a consideration. 5 districts does eliminate what some people dislike about the 4 district system, which is the mayor's going to live somewhere. So the mayor's elected citywide, but does reside in a district, so that district would have 2 people on the dais, whereas the other districts only have 1 because they'd have a district representative plus the mayor. So that leads us to concerns in some jurisdictions. We go to the next slide. And I'm happy to come back and talk about any of the points on these slides. I just want to go through all of them. And then the last question, if you do decide to go with a 4 districts plus a citywide mayor, then you have to choose the term of the mayor. It can be either 2 years or 4 years. Lots of factors go into that decision. 4 years is definitely more common. 2 years is kind of an Orange County thing, but there are a couple of other cities in California that do a 2-year term as well. So happy to answer questions you have now or after the public input. And you saw earlier, if we go to the next slide, so for the public in particular, we want to hear about their preferences for 5 versus 4 districts. And then also any input they have on what is their neighborhood. If they have a community of interest in mind, we'd love to hear that. And happy to answer any questions anyone has about the process as well. And as you heard earlier, the city has a very extensive website, a phone number, and an email address specific for this project where people can share their thoughts as the process goes along as well. With that, happy to answer any questions now or after the public comment.
Great. Thanks again for being here. We'll take it to council questions. You want to start?
First question, what is the percentage of error when you're picking the number of voters in each district?
So the number, the number of voters is actually, it's not a survey, so it's supposed to be precise. It's as of the November of 2022 and 2024 elections. That's when the state collects the data. So as you all are very aware, the number of registered voters is constantly changing. So this is as of the 2024 November election. But they do like geocode each voter's address and put them in the right census block.
And the other question is, how, before the council makes the decision on 4 or 5, are we going to get any input from the community of what their actual choices are? And instead of us just deciding what we want, we kind of want to decide what the people want.
Yes. So obviously, I was happy to see folks already chiming in at the last meeting. There's a public hearing today. If you want to hold off on the decision today and wait until after the next hearing, that's certainly your prerogative, and that would give folks more opportunity to weigh in. I haven't looked at the latest email batch, but I don't know that we've gotten emails on that question yet. But residents can send in their emails at any point on that issue.
Thank you. That's all I have for now.
Thank you for the presentation again. I just have a few questions about timing. If we choose to have 4 districts and an at-large mayor, when does the at-large mayor election start? Is it 2028? Is it 2030? Is it, in the transition or after we have the other four district
Yeah,
representatives?
it's a good question. So I don't remember and we haven't mentioned, but residents should be aware, none of this is for this year's election.
Right.
This will take effect in 2028 either way. And I don't remember off the top of my head, do you have 3 seats up in 2028 or 2?
Going to be 2.
2. Okay, so now you get a question. It probably makes sense to have the citywide mayor start in 2030, because then you'd have 2 council seats and 2 council seats in 2028, 2 council seats in 2030, and the mayor rolling in. Because the key thing when we get to election sequencing is there always has to be 5 people on the dais. And so if we want the mayor to be elected in 2028, what you'll get is actually what Ojai has, where I was on Tuesday. 1 year the mayor is up and 1 council member is up. And then the next election, the other 3 council members are up. So it works. You just have a little bit of a weird dynamic of 3 council districts being 1 year and 1 council district being the other year. But nothing in this process changes the number of seats that are up each election. It's just a question of whether it's 2 council members or 2 council members and the mayor, or 1 council member and the mayor.
That makes sense. Thank you. And if we choose to have 5 districts, can we keep our current tradition of having members of the council nominate the mayor and vice mayor every year?
Oh, yes, definitely. It would continue to be as it is now under your prerogative to decide how the mayor is chosen.
As opposed to the automatic rotation that I think Watsonville does. Like, District 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, they just go down the line.
Yeah, each city, just as you do at large, you have the prerogative to decide how the mayor is chosen.
Got it. And then in terms of like which districts to go first, I guess we don't know because we don't have maps, but is there an order as to like we go 1, 2 first and 3, 4 next? Like how do we just determine which districts to go first?
So the statute calls for setting up an election sequence, that's what we call it, the election sequence, in a way that furthers the purposes of the California Voting Rights Act, which, yes, is just as vague as that sounds. And the idea is that if you have a underrepresented population that's geographically concentrated, you focus on their needs in setting that sequence. You don't have a geographic concentration of any underrepresented protected class in the law. And so it would be up to the council to choose a sequence. What we recommend is after a map is chosen, because we can't look at incumbents or candidates when we're choosing a map, but once a map is chosen, then we look at where the current council members are. And if there's only 1 council member in a district, that district is assigned to that year. Sounds a little weird. People say, are we favoring? And the way we say is, no, we're respecting the voters. The voters chose the current council. The random assignment of election years should not tell the voters, you chose this person before, but you can't choose them again. Because voters should keep in mind, if a council member's term ends in 2028 and they're in a 2030 seat, they leave the council in 2028. It's not up to the voters in that if the sequencing comes out weird, the member's forced off the council just by that number. So after a map is chosen, but before the ordinance is adopted, we would then overlay that and look at that. Now, it gets complicated if there are 2 council members in a given seat and those 2 council members are on a different election cycle. We won't know that until we overlay it, but if we do run into it, then I'll walk through all those scenarios.
Questions?
I really only have one right now. We've talked about the email coming in with emails from the citizens. I don't think the council's been receiving those emails, and I was wondering if that's possible so we can get more input about their opinions, what they're saying, and what they're thinking.
Are you referring to like when people submit maps, for example?
I'm referring to if someone emails in a question.
To the district email?
Yes.
Yeah, so if they send in like commentary with their map, we process the map, and then what goes on for every map on the site, you'll see there's a page that's the map, page that's the demographics, and then if they sent in a message, the 3rd page of the PDF is their message, verbatim. So you'll see all those posted, and once we get to the point where you're allowed to consider maps, those will be in your agenda packets as well. If they're sending in general questions, I think they're going on the agenda materials or.
So it's either additional materials, which the ones that you guys are receiving now have been sent in as additional materials. And then if it's not additional materials, it's typically included with the map. And so one way or another, it's somewhere that the council can view. I did want to just take a second. I meant to say this in my presentation, but I really do want to thank members of the public, some of whom were in the audience this evening, who've already participated in the process, because we have been getting really great turnout for so soon along in the process. And so far we've been getting, like Doug said, we had 9 maps, which is great. They don't always submit comments. Sometimes it's just a link to the map, and then Doug starts working on reformatting it. But for the cases where we did receive comments, we've shared those when possible. And you'll notice sometimes there is information redacted, like, for example, personal identifiable information or council member personal identifiable information. But other than that, it's pretty much uploaded as is.
It'll be a little more logical once the council's allowed to consider maps, because it'll all just be in the agenda packet. But at this early stage, that they're posted online and in that manner.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Since this is like a repeat of your last week's meeting, I think for people who are watching it for the first time, can just about what the process is going to be for planning commissioner and appointments and stuff like that. Can we just highlight that again so people understand that that'll be a decision? I think when we talked about last week that would be pushed off after the decision. So I just had to be on the record for other people I haven't watched the meeting.
Sure. So the appointment of planning commissioners is it's a council decision because it's adopted in our municipal code. And so one of the council's fiscal year goals for this budget cycle was to amend our municipal code as it comes to boards and commissions. So that is something that staff is currently in the process of working on and will most likely come back to you next fiscal year for adoption. But that process, the entire appointment process for all boards and commissions, is kind of subject to council decision. And so if the council wanted to change the current process, that could be done through adoption of an ordinance. If the council wanted to retain the current process where each council member has their own appointee, and you want to make it further kind of confined by the boundaries of districts, that's something that could also be addressed in the ordinance. But that's something that the council has the ability to determine, and we would most likely tackle that following the districting discussion.
Perfect. And then, Doug, if you wouldn't just mind just refreshing us too, that this map will be in play until 2030, and then 1 year after would be then reevaluated again, and then again not until 2040. So I think one thing that I've heard a lot about is the mall development coming online and stuff like that, which if that came in after 2030, it wouldn't be picked up until 2040. Maybe you could just walk us through that.
Right. It's a good question. So because we're late in the decade, and the population numbers we use to determine equal population are from every decennial census. So now we're using the 2020 census. So this map will be used in 2028 and 2030. So every district will hold 1 election. And then the 2030 census data are released in 2031. And so the map will be reviewed. It'll be an opportunity for the council to change the map. Depending on population numbers, you may have to change it, or you can change it just if you feel there's some change needed. And then the revised map will be used for 2032 and the following 10 years. And so the tricky part does come, as you say, from developments mid-decade. So if there's a big housing project that comes in 2032, 2034, well, the lines are not adjusted until after the next census. For those people like me, the redistricting nerds, there used to be the ability to change your lines mid-decade if you had a big development. The state has put in statute that you can't do that. The only way is if you annex an enormous populated area. So after each census in 2030, the data are released in 2031, and the map would be reviewed and possibly revised for use in 2032.
Perfect, thank you. And then I think maybe just a couple of questions for the city attorney that we've been hearing, or I think come in on emails, or we hear when we're out meeting with the community. Is there been any update around like the SCOTUS rulings and stuff like that that would affect anything where we are today in the last couple of weeks?
Thank you for the question. As previously addressed, the U.S. Supreme Court did not strike down the Federal Voting Rights Act, nor did it strike down any parallel state versions of it, like the California Voting Rights Act. And I would also add that nothing in the opinion modifies the timelines set forth in the California Voting Rights Act. So, as it stands currently, the California Voting Rights Act is still good law. And that completes my answer.
Perfect. And then just one other question I see come in quite a bit is, can you just maybe give a high overview of just what term limits are in Capitola at the present time? And then that's a city ordinance, and so how does that look and how does that work? And how does that get changed or does it not get changed?
Yes, so currently there are the Capitola Municipal Code codifies term limits for council members. There is a maximum of 2 elected terms. We've received some questions regarding how that interplays with the move to districts, and there's been a couple of questions. One has to do with whether an individual would be able to avail themselves to, for example, if there was an at-large mayor, 2 terms as a council member, then 2 separate terms in the mayoral seat. That would not work under the current structure. There's a government provision that says a mayor is a council member for the purposes of serving on the city council. So a cap of 2 terms would apply regardless of the title, whether the person, again, carries the title of mayor or council member. There's also been questions about whether the move to districts renews the clock for term limits. The answer to that is no. The language in the municipal code does not account for at-large seats versus district seats. It focuses mostly on the elected component of the position.
And just a follow-up to that that I've been asked. So if a person ran for an at-large seat in 26, because that's what we have, and then they decided to, in 28, want to run for their district seat, that would be their second election, so then they would be termed out really at a lock of 6 years. The 2 years from 26 to 28, and then they would run for their 1 seat in their district, and so that would be their second election. Is that true?
Yes, so there is authority out there that says a partial term would qualify towards the term limit count.
Okay, thank you so much for that.
Could I ask one more question? So, we're still debating about whether or not to have 5 districts or 4 districts and an elected mayor. If the city chose to say, for example, to have 4 districts and an elected mayor now, when we get to 31, when the districts are going to be redone, does the city have the option at that time of, while we're changing districts, saying, no, this mayor thing didn't work out, so we're going to go back to having 5 districts, or, vice versa?
It's a little weird. So you can only do this by ordinance in furtherance of the purposes of the California Voting Rights Act. So at the end of this process, we'll adopt an ordinance because you have the demand letter. You're complying with the California Voting Rights Act.
Right.
We have had cities that said, well, if we go from 4 to 5, that improves a protected class's ability to elect. So that is also in furtherance of the purposes of the California Voting Rights Act. Here, given the demographics we laid out, we'd have to see where the demographics are in 2030, but it's a bit of a stretch.
Right.
And to be honest, we don't really know where the California Voting Rights Act will be in 2030 with the Calais stuff all swirling around. So, so certainly the voters can do it at any time. If you put it on the ballot, the voters can change it. Whether you can, I don't know if you have any, I always defer to the city attorney as the final opinion, but whether you can would be a gray area. Difficult. Do you agree with that?
Well, maybe we could get a little more information on that before we get to the decision-making point.
Yes, so I can confirm that you can always take it to the voters. Our initial, well, so there's one principle is the rule of equal dignities. And as a general matter, what you do by ordinance, you would have to amend or undo also by ordinance. Same with resolutions, same with things that you take to the voters. There is also the general process for converting from a rotational mayor to an elected mayor. And part of that process in the government code, it does require going back to the voters. But again, we need to do further research on that to see if the rule of equal dignities would
Great,
override.
thank you.
The other piece too, that I don't know the answer to, but to throw into the mix there is you also can't cut short someone's term. So if a mayor is elected in 2030, whether that change would take effect right away in 2032 or 2040 is another variable I don't know the answer to.
It's
Yeah.
complicated.
Yes.
A follow-up question for the city attorney. If we're getting to the end of this and we get a decision from the Supreme Court which changes everything, or Santa Monica or Huntington Beach wins, can we at any time stop and pause once we get this moving?
The short answer is yes. The longer answer is that we are currently operating under the safe harbor timeline set forth in the California Voting Rights Act. So that's where these deadlines come from.
And the reason I smile there is I was on 3 different phone calls earlier today with different city attorneys wrestling with exactly that issue. We just don't know.
Great, thanks again. I do have a few questions. Thank you for asking that. That was one of them. I will cross it off. I just wanted to ask just sort of a baseline question, clarifying. So when the maps are being created, you put up other like demographics of each district, but when we're making the districts, it's truly just based up on the population. You're not basing it off of how many registered voters there are or anything like that. So it's
correct.
Okay.
It's equal population in terms of total population from the 2020 census.
Yes. Okay. And then you actually answered that other one for me too. And then I guess this might be more for the city attorney. If moving to an at-large mayor, would that put any more like financial strain on the city? I don't know if that mayor would be assumed to get a larger stipend per month because they're at large, or the election costs, or if they resign and we have to do a special election because it's the mayoral seat. I know those are all kind of rare instances, but just curious.
Thank you. So I am aware of other jurisdictions that do provide a directly elected mayor with a larger stipend that differs from the stipend received by their peers. So there is precedent for that. And in terms of appointments, the government code section, there's also language in the elections code that governs vacancies. It just provides that they can be filled by appointment or special election. It does not distinguish between the title of the office that's being vacated.
Okay.
I do think that there would be, so the pay is subject to the council's discretion within kind of government code confines. There's certain ceilings that you could go to, but it would be a council decision about whether or not the mayor made more or not. There would be a slight election savings because if we didn't have a citywide election every 4 years and it was just district elections, we would save some with the county clerk. I'm not sure if city clerk has a ballpark estimate.
So I actually have this year's numbers. So for those of you who don't know, when we pay for our elections, we pay per voter per contest. So for example, right now, the city council is just one contest on the ballot, and usually it'll say, who would you like to vote to city council? Pick 2 if it's a 2-seat year, or pick 3. And then there are names listed and voters will check 2 bubbles or 3 bubbles depending on how many seats. So that's technically one contest. When we move to district elections, it's going to be multiple contests. So in a 2-seat year, it'll say, who would you like to vote for District 1? Names will be listed. Who would you like to vote for District 2? Names will be listed. So we'll have to pay per voter per contest. That's how it works now. And then it would just alternate like it does now, 3 seats versus 2 seats. So there's not really like a huge cost difference for the mayor versus a district seat, because no matter what, we would be paying per contest. It's just the way the cookie crumbles there.
Great information. Thank you. Oh, and I guess there is a section on our website, on the mapping website, even if somebody isn't making a map, they can message in a direct question, and have we received any?
Sadly, no.
Okay.
We did receive one direct question today to our district email as a part of a map submission, which will be included once that map is posted and revised. Like I said, I really want to mention the big thank you to our members of the public who have been submitting the maps and the feedback and the explanations. We really do appreciate it and look at every single word and every single part, I do promise. But no, we haven't received any direct questions, which is why staff is proposing some alternative methods to kind of generate some questions so we can try and get it all cleared up before we get to the mapping process.
Great. Thank you so much for all the hard work. Do we have any other follow-up questions? Okay. Thank you so much again. And now we'll take it to public comment. If you wish to speak on this item, please come on up. Hi, welcome.
Thank you, Mayor Morgan and council members. Heidi Callison, I live in Capitola. First, I wanted to thank the city for their excellent job on the outreach so far. And wanted to we've heard it many times tonight, but the demographer has said there are no concentrations of protected classes of people in Capitola. Even so, I think it's important that we hold the spirit of the CVRA in our hearts as we move forward. So diluting representation by having only one representative can be partially offset if we move to a generally elected mayor. That would give each individual in our community 2 accountable representatives. I've heard people talk about the tradition Capitola has, and I love tradition, but at the same time, rotating mayor with the context that we're no longer going to be generally electing all council members who then represent us in the selection of the mayor, means that voters would be removed from 4/5 of the council. And that separation would virtually eliminate our voice when selection for a mayor comes to you. The blind rotation is something I've also heard as a proposal, and that's where a mayor would rotate by district number. That carries a real risk of seating someone who is inexperienced. The position of mayor is extremely important because that person is the gatekeeper to a fair and open public process. There have been many times this year already where I'm thankful for Mayor Morgan for having the experience to serve and to carry us through challenging times. So I think it's foundational, that the gatekeeper role is foundational to citizen participation in government. So I don't view that proposal as something that would be effective. I did want to mention and perhaps disagree or counter a little bit about council dynamics, as was mentioned in Doug's presentation. I know he was parroting another council somewhere, but while someone in the wings might be more cooperative, knowing that they will also become mayor, running for mayor requires people to get endorsements and to engage the political process. So that also perhaps cancels out the incentive to be cooperative. And finally, Capitola is not an island. We have to behave regionally and work with our nearby partners and outside legislative bodies. So I think it's really important, especially for a small city, for us to be strong and have that concentrated voice through an at-large elected mayor. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Welcome.
Good evening, Mayor Morgan, members of the council. My name is Mark Warshaw, and I've lived in Capitola for 22 years. I'm not here to dismiss the importance of equal representation. That's a genuine value I share. I'm here because the process that we're witnessing here is built on misleading premise. And this council and this community deserve an honest accounting of before we permanently change how we govern ourselves. We've been told that this is about complying with state law. It's not. Capitola has not been sued. No court has found that our elections have harmed any voters. What we received was a demand letter from a private Malibu law firm, Schenkman and Hughes, that sends hundreds of such letters to California cities as a business model. Cities that comply pay $30,000. Councilmember Clark called it the overreach of an attorney from somewhere else making us do something we don't like. He's right. It's extortion. It's almost blackmail. Consider this. MALDEF, the Mexican American Legal Defense Fund, the nation's leading Latino civil rights organization, publicly states that it does not bring these actions against cities under 50,000. Capitola has less than 10,000 residents. And I've reviewed the entire CVRA's litigation record. Every city actually sued or settled: Palmdale, Anaheim, Modestos, Santa Monica, Whitaker, Compton, Santa Barbara, had a population between 85,000 and 350,000. The smallest city to reach a courtroom was 5 times our size. No court has ever found that a city of our size has violated the CVRA. In short, council has more room to push back than it has been led to believe, because no court has ever actually tested this against a city of our small size. Now consider what changed 4 weeks ago. On April 29th, the Supreme Court issued the ruling of Louisiana v. Cali, gutting the Federal Voting Rights Act standard the CVRA is modeled on. In that 6-3 decision, the court held that drawing districts based on racial statistics or any other type without proof of intentional discrimination is unconstitutional. Legal analysts have already flagged the CVRA's enforcement mechanism as potentially vulnerable. Proceeding now doesn't eliminate our legal risk. It trades one threat for another and permanently restructures our democracy in the process, a democracy which has worked very well. I ask all of you one thing: pause. Commission an independent legal opinion on whether Cali changes Capitola's exposure before this council takes another step. Do not let a Malibu attorney's deadline be mistaken for the law itself. Right now, every Capitola voter has a voice in every council seat. That's worth defending, especially when the legal ground between this demand may no longer be solid. I thank you for your kind attention.
Thank you. Hi, welcome.
Hi, Linda Smith. The decision is how many districts we have and how a mayor is chosen may be the most impactful decision that you make in your tenure on a council. I hope that you each consider it carefully and don't rush to a decision, but I do hope you reach that decision soon. I've spent quite a bit of time looking back on the past 26 years of council elections. Until recently, registered voter turnout wasn't included in the results tables. But by looking at the total numbers, I observed that Capitola has consistently had a high percentage of overall turnout in the 80s. Some of the races were very close, with 1 vote in 2002 and 3 votes in 2006 declaring win versus loss. Many times the difference between vote getters was well under 100 and as low as 19. It's evident that Capitolans care about who leads us and turn out to vote. You've received very well articulated reasoning for a 4-district elected mayor structure. I do not disagree with any points made in the published emails in this regard. I will add that having the mayor selected by elected council also provides benefits, but those benefits are mostly within the council and do not outweigh the reality that what the people want and what we need is to see our reflection in our council. The process of selecting the mayor should be consistent between councils and not based on political positioning. I was trying to grasp the reality of voting. Not every 2 years for 2 or 3 leaders, as we've done in the past, but voting only 4 years and for 1 person. And who that person is limited by whatever will wind up as being my district. And I'm sorry, but as hard as I try, I can't feel good about that prospect. I'd like to believe that all 5 members of council have full city perspective on issues and can collaborate with people from all sections of town but experience tells me that's not the norm. In the end, politicians are beholden to the people who vote for them. In the past, council candidates that didn't knock on doors all over town didn't win. I doubt that a district candidate is going to knock on doors outside their district. We need at least one person on council that's beholden to the entirety of our voting population. A 2-year termed elected mayor would offer the opportunity for every Capitolan to vote every election while maintaining the required stability with staff and necessary collaboration with others on the council. I submit that that's the best option. Modification to term limits can be addressed by the people on the 2028 ballot to allow all council members to serve 8 consecutive years before terming out like they do now, regardless of whether they're the mayor or the councilman. Whatever you decide, I understand and would like the city attorney to confirm that once this decision is made, changing the mayoral structure would need to come back to the voters. So your decision on this will stand and be difficult to change for years. I appreciate you carrying out this responsibility on our behalf, and I thank you all for your service.
Thank you. Hi, welcome.
Good evening, Kevin McGuire, Capitola, since 1974. I just wanted to say, I believe Mark brought up a great point of some of the new changes in laws, and I get it, the shakedown of this demand letter and really what it would cost to fight. And I believe Capitola could win because of a few of the points that this guy needs to prove. Really, he can't prove that, but to get to that point and to litigate and go to court and defend that, and I'm sure Enrique would come up here and help fight that battle for us. But yeah, it's a financial decision, so that's unfortunate that we are in this situation. Couple of points on structure. I support a 4 districts with a citywide elected mayor, and I believe a 2-year term would be really great because every election, everybody gets to vote for something, and that keeps that mayoral person accountable and really just helps to represent Capitola. And then along in the 2028 election, I think naturally is going to be the 2 terms that are coming up. So those would be the 2 probably next districts that would go in 2028, whatever numbers of those districts are. And then 2030 would be, you wouldn't have 3 people running again. You'd only have 2 plus a mayor each time. So I think that is probably a good structure to consider. And then second, just want to talk about address verification, and voluntary forms aren't enforceable. So when someone asks a neighborhood to trust them as a district representative, we need to verify they actually live there, a deed, a lease, utility bill, at the district address, a government issued ID, signed affidavit if it under penalty of perjury verified by the city clerk before nomination papers are issued, with annual confirmations from city members. Upland, San Bernardino, Fresno all require this as part of their district transitions. I asked the city attorney to bring a mandatory framework to council on just document requirements. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Hi, welcome.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. TJ Welch. To start with, I'm not in favor of districts. I would like to believe that having the opportunity for every voter to have input to every elected official is best. However, at this time, it doesn't appear that that choice is going to happen. So based on that, I would encourage 4 districts with an elected mayor. 2 primary reasons. As mentioned earlier, this gives every voter 2 opportunities to elect representatives that best represent the interests in the city. Also, this option allows the at-large mayor to be charged with representing the entire city as opposed to representing a specific district. I would also support the mayor election for every 2 years, providing everyone the opportunity to vote every cycle, the ability to allow, the ability to allow for change. I also think there are some benefits of supporting a good candidate that it may not be in your own district by having voting the opportunity for a mayor at large. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak on this item? All right, I don't see any. So we'll come back to council. I just want to make sure everybody gets a chance to say something before any like major motions or anything are made, only because this is a big deal and I want to hear from everybody. So why don't I start on this side for any comments, deliberation?
Turn on my mic. I know I'm one of the people who's pushed hard that we have some sort of public meeting for the community. And I do think it's important that we set it up so that we have opportunities for all different people in our community to participate. So I'm happy to see that you're going to have the webinar on Saturday, which in all honesty is probably something, being older, I wouldn't participate in. But I know there are a number of people who work and are much more computer savvy than I am and capable of doing that, and that gives them that opportunity. But I think we also need something for the people like me who probably wouldn't participate in a webinar. And I know timing is critical and timing's hard because we don't want to have 14 meetings about this. We want to be as concise as we can, but as thorough as we can. And what I would like to do is if we could set up, because I know we've already advertised having a meeting on the 11th at 6:15 with the council, if we could perhaps set aside, an hour of that time. Since we've heard from the demographer twice, I don't think we have to hear him present to us a third time. But have it set up so it could be more like a community meeting. And this is a new idea for me, so I don't have all of the details worked out. But I think it's important to have something in person where people can come and express what they have to say. And in all honesty, I would like to hear from the community a bit more before we make this critical decision about, are we going to have 5 districts or 4 districts and an elected mayor. So I'm trying to grapple. I'm really just putting this out to everyone and say, can we work out a way that we could have sort of a semi-community meeting, within the council meeting on the 11th as part of our second public hearing.
Great, awesome. Vice Mayor?
First of all, just, I know it's supposed to be comments, but just a clarifying question. If we decided to do 5, 5 districts, and then in 2030 election, we decided that we wanted to do 4 and a mayor, is that, the decision has to be made now during this process now, and that's set for what the next 2 election looks like. There's not a rethink or anything at that time before it's fully implemented. Is that correct?
Typically, no. So the general rule is the decision to convert to a directly elected mayor is usually taken to the voters. There's a small carve out in the context of transitioning 2 districts. But outside of that, this is going back to the voters issue.
Well, and I was going to add a point from a map perspective. When you change from 5 to 4, you change maps. And one thing that happens is some people would get to vote in 2028 and 2030, and some people would not get to vote in 2028 and would also not get to vote in 2030. So that's why it's good to let 2 election cycles, let all the districts hold 1 election, essentially, before switching midterm. You can do it, but people tend to get upset if they weren't in a district that held a 2028 election, and they're also not in a district that held a 2030 election.
Okay. My only other comment is that I could support what Councilmember Weston was talking about more outreach, and I'll leave it at that.
Councilmember Roebuck, would you like to go next?
I also agree that having a more interactive Q&A session on June 11th is a good idea before we decide. I think we've got a lot to ponder because there are pros and cons to both compositions. I do want to say that, Capitola does have a long history of rotating the mayorship to ensure that our elected leaders get to participate fully in city governance. And, given that we're being forced into this transition to district-based elections, I think it's important to hold on to this tradition that has been part of Capitola history for 70 years.
Yeah, this is a very important thing that we're going to do. So I'm glad we got the extra 30 days. I think we need to take as much time as we can while we're going through this process. And also, like Councilmember Westman said, that we let the public come and give us more information before we make these really tough decisions.
Great. Yeah, it sounds like we're all in agreement of a little bit more community Q&A. I think we could figure out a way to sort of streamline that, maybe take all the questions at once, compile them, and then answer. We just want to be careful to not get into like a back and forth and, this sort of get into the weeds. We want it to be concise and practical for those that want to participate. But I think that that's a great idea, and maybe even take questions beforehand as well. And okay.
And I'm even thinking that this isn't questions for the count. I mean, it's not for us to answer those questions.
Right.
It's in fact, I wondered to make it feel more like a community meeting. The council wants to go sit in the front row, so the demographer can sit up here, the city attorney can sit up here, and those are the people who are answering the questions, not the city council.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think switching seats is a great tool if we want to do that.
I was even thinking we could structure it maybe more like a town hall with a remote mic, so people don't have, not everyone's comfortable speaking up there. So go and sort of go to the audience, reach out to people, try to just mix it up so it doesn't feel the same as this. That's what I'm hearing the council is interested in.
Yeah, I think that is great. And then I think we are probably able to adopt, because there's some multiple points in this action, but it sounds like we could adopt the timeline tonight, correct? And I think that would put us...
No matter what, we do need to maintain the June 11th public hearing date to stick to our timeline of adoption. And so this alternative format for the item doesn't necessarily take away from the fact that it's still a public hearing. You're still receiving public input on the topic that has been noticed. We will review and kind of reformat the item, and that will be included in our staff report, which will be published just next week, so everyone can read it just about a week from tomorrow. And then we will be back here in 2 weeks to talk about this with you all. But we will work on that format and publish that as a part of the agenda packet for that meeting.
Right, and it goes without saying, we'd like to see the city, publicize this more than we simply have it on an agenda. We put something up on our website, put something out through social media and that, so people will know this special time's going to take place.
We'll definitely make an effort to do that. We can also try and solicit questions through social media and through our website, and hopefully we'll have something concrete to start biting into on the 11th already.
I mean, so far, I think we've done a great job, the information that's gone out to the public, and it's been thorough and easy to read and understand. So we just continue with that. We should get a pretty good turnout.
And one other piece, just to add ideas, if the one concern is the crowd that's not comfortable in a webinar format, sometimes we will do a workshop like an hour before the council meeting. So tough for commuters to get to, but commuters may be more comfortable with the webinar. So the audience may be comfortable with that. We have a per meeting expense, but it's mostly a travel driven expense. So we're not, if we have a meeting right before the council meeting and then the council meeting, we're not going to charge you. So that may be another option too, as you're putting together how to structure this. It's 4 o'clock to do just a forum.
So what do we all think about that as far as time? Would we?
I like that idea. would that be considered I say hard start? Or no, that would then take us into the actual meeting?
So yeah, a little bit of nuance here. So it would take us into the meeting. Frankly, we may even want to use a different room. We could go to the community room 4 to 6:30, for example, and then 7 p.m. is the start of our, 6 o'clock is the start of our regular scheduled meeting, and then 6:15 is the start of the districting hearing. So we could do like a Q&A kind of format with Doug in the community room from 4:30 till 5:30. Thank you. I got the times right on the third try. And then could kick off the council meeting at 7, public comment.
Oh my God.
We'll make sure the details are publicized, ladies and gentlemen.
I think everyone actually understands what I'm saying. I'm just not saying the right time because everyone's correcting me. So
Catching your drift, yeah.
catching my drift. And then we would kick off at 6:15 with the actual
item,
and we would do an abridged presentation, open the public hearing to comply, take public comment.
Does that?
You could do both. You could do the pre-forum and kind of the pre-structure. I don't know how to describe it. The pre-structured hearing.
Yeah.
They're talking about as well.
Okay. Okay. We have options. Did you have?
I guess my question would be timing. We don't necessarily have to be there for this Q&A, correct? Because it's more of a town hall. Is that
Webinar.
this will be is it a webinar? Is
We
it
can we
Like webinar,
could
we're not-
schedule if we chose to have a 4 p.m. or 4:30 p.m. meeting. It could be scheduled as a special council meeting where the council attends, or it could be scheduled just as a community meeting and the council is not required to attend. You can attend. You could come in and out as members of the audience or whatever. You just wouldn't be speaking or deliberating because that would be a violation of the Brown Act. But yes, we could just host it as a community outreach event before the council meeting, which would make it a bit more flexible for our council members who are already traveling in for the meeting at 6. And then you would be able to kind of hear some of the output of that meeting during our presentation, or we could host again the Q&A portion during the regular public hearing.
I'm in favor of that.
Residents who want to be sure you hear what they say would just stick around.
Yeah, it seems like it gives people more opportunity to speak because they could go to the 4:30 to 6 meeting and ask questions and that, and then they would still have an opportunity at the regular council meeting at 6:15 when we had our public hearing, because then we would still open it up to the public to speak.
Yeah, I think it sounds like everybody's nodding for the community meeting prior
If
on the
someone
11th.
couldn't be there at 4:30 and hear that part, they still could come to the regular meeting and speak.
Great. Okay. That's direction for that. Yeah, I'm definitely still grappling with the 4 versus 5 and the whole mayorship. So I definitely want to hear more feedback from the voters. And let's see. I think we're kind of all on the same page. I don't know if somebody's willing to.
I just have a question.
Yeah.
With some of the questions that come in, is there a way that they can be responded to? Like if they're just a very mundane question, like that maybe it's already been talked about. So I thought instead of somebody thinking like, I have this question, I got to wait to come to the meeting or to hear it. Is there a way that question and answer can be displayed?
So yeah, we will definitely work on that. Yeah, we definitely will find a way to make sure that that's possible.
I thought maybe if they're categorized, I don't know if that, how this.
Depending on how many questions we get, the website already has a Q&A with kind of generic questions, but yes, if anyone sends in a question we can add that is of general information, we can certainly add it.
I think it's especially interesting just up to this decision that we have to make, if those are highlighted so that people, knew that the question, maybe they could be more resource to them. So, okay, that's all I had.
My only request for the city council is, as you consider this community outreach event, that we have a stop time of 5:30, just so it allows staff enough time to prepare for a 6 p.m. regular meeting, because it does involve some setup.
So you want a motion? Okay, well, I'll try. So I'm going to make a motion to adopt the updated timeline with the addition of a community meeting on the 11th of June from 4:30 to 5:30. And then we'll have our public hearing on the 11th after that, and receive community input and discuss and provide direction on composition and number of voting districts. And hopefully we can come to a conclusion on the 11th. So that's my motion.
I'll second that.
Great, we have a motion. Maybe please have a roll call.
Councilmember Clark,
Aye.
Councilor Orbach,
Aye.
Councilor Westman,
Aye.
Vice Mayor Jensen,
Aye.
and Mayor Morgan.
Aye, passes unanimously. Thank you, everybody who has been participating so far. It's a long road, but we got this. All right.
Mayor, if I can just add one.
Oh, please, yeah.
I wanted to comment, Mr. Warshaw had done excellent research on the lawsuits.
Yes.
He did miss one that I wanted to highlight, just Sunny Slope Water. If any of you know Hollister, it covers half of Hollister. It's 22,000 people. They actually missed their timeline because they had an open seat and no one was running. And so why go to districts? So they missed their timeline. They were sued for missing the 90 days and had to pay $250,000, even though they had already agreed to go to districts. So just so it's clear on the record, they're bigger than you, but not by much.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, let's take a quick break and then we can get back to the regular items. It's 7:41. Let's be back by 7:45.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. I am here to let the public know that the city has been approached for a public art donation for the statue that's been discussed in to honor the women of the water. Staff has met with the project team and that there will be a presentation at the upcoming, at the July Art and Cultural Commission, which is the July 14th. And staff is going to be sending out noticing postcards to encourage the public to attend that Art and Cultural Commission meeting. And we look forward to hearing that presentation. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Anything else from staff? Great. Council, if you'd like to add anything, I know we're out of order, so.
Just a quick one. Public Works, a shout out for them keeping the lagoon intact over the rain we had today. I saw the tractor out there, so that was awesome. And then I made a complaint about some tagging the other day at the new restaurant park, and the next day it was taken care of. So thank you, Public Works.
Great. Any comments?
I just have two quick questions. I know that we're going to be doing a look at our junior guard program, I think in August or September. Are we going to send out an RFP to have someone who's going to evaluate the program so we have this done by an outside person?
We have identified an outside person. I remember the CSLSA expert sort of person. It's not a space where there's really a professional consulting universe. So we have engaged an outside expert, someone who began their career in Santa Cruz and ended up working in Southern California.
So are they going to, is the council going to have any input into that, or?
We can bring the person's resume and qualifications to the council prior to engaging them.
Yeah, that would be great.
Sure.
Yeah. Somebody else is agreeing with me, so I have to.
I can agree.
And we talked about that we're going to, make certain that we're going to do a much more robust onboarding process for future council members. And I was thinking about that, and it seems to me that item should come to the council because we have council members who've been here, who've been through that, and understand that process. And I think it would be good to get, input from the council members about what that process should look like. Yeah. Well, you have information. You were a new council member, and you can tell people what you think what you got. Should you've gotten more or less, whatever.
More is better.
First thing, just wanted to take a minute just to thank the community for being so involved in the redistricting process. It's a really important step that Capitola is taking, and seeing the involvement early, and hopefully it continues. Just a couple comments. One was I'm hearing a lot of concerns, and maybe the city manager could respond to about the city website. Seems like one of the biggest things that's happening, and it's been, I think the website's been up for like a month now, but it's hard to do research, I'm hearing. So if you go to Google, or if you do a chat or whatever you're doing, and you're looking at a document, it's coming up with like a 404 error code, or it says document's been moved. And is that being addressed? And it's like, I know just over the last month, I think with a lot of these things going on, people are trying to research about how council elections were before or something like that, and then you can't find that data, and I was wondering where we are in that process.
So this is actually a question that I would type into AI, and so someone in the back of the room maybe could do this and fact check me, but my understanding is the way that works is, so all of our website has now migrated over to a new address. So it's not at the old address anymore. And so that's what's happening is the Google links people are searching for aren't there anymore. The way it used to work, the last time I looked into this, is Google basically sends out little bots that like troll around the internet and identify where things are. And so at some point they will update. They will find the news sites and all the links. It's not, the city doesn't do anything, it's the Google bots do. And I forgive me if someone is more techie and has researched that online, but that's what's happening. So that's why when you search and you say Capitola districting, we could see about trying to get some pages forwarded to try to avoid that. It's something we could look into to try to avoid that in the near term, but that's the issue. It's not on the city's side, it's on the Google search side, if that makes sense.
Can I ask a follow-up question on that item? Can the city make its own search engine more robust? Because I have great difficulty, we have that little search box, and I type something in there and I never come up with the right thing.
I'm going to look at the city attorney about staying on topic here with Brown Act. We actually are meeting with an AI team, startup AI team that's trying to help cities with that, because I know exactly what you're saying, that the web page search thing is functionally useless in my opinion. But I think there are new products that are going to be out there. The question will just be sort of the cost and implementation timeline, but we are talking to a team that's specializing in this kind of thing. I think it's next week.
Well, I appreciate staff looking into that. Thanks for letting me interrupt you.
I would just like to push a little bit on that. I mean, if this process takes Google another 2 or 3 months, I don't think that's acceptable, that we can't search for documents or people. So is there a way that our old website can overlay on top of this during this process? Because
may I make a suggestion, sir?
Sorry, there's no open comment right now.
I was going to answer your question because I work in this business, if I may.
Maybe in a minute, but we're dealing with council comments right now.
To help out.
Thank you.
I'm just saying, it's struggling to hear that the community would have to wait until Google catches up on this data. And so, is there a way that the whole website can run in the background, that people go to .org and,
like I said, we can take a look into a process to forward so that there's an automatic forwarding. I don't know whether or not that's feasible. Our web provider right now we're not super satisfied with the services we've been getting, so I don't want to overpromise. I will say that people going to our website, it's much easier to navigate than it used to be. So as long as people just go to the new website, they're going to find, if they want districting information, it's right on the front page.
Yeah, it's just anything that's, not there. So it goes into my next question. So I've been asked about the shuttle services. And so this year, so it's the same shuttle service that we have this year as we have last year. Because I know last year we had a contract come to us. This year, I don't recall if we did, but it's the same service. And is this the same route? Because I did go to your search engine today and type in, because I was going to forward it to them. And all I got out of the search engine that came up was a map from 2017 and 2014. I guess two-part question, just if you know, are we using the same shuttle service as was it Community Bridges last year? Because I know last year we had a contract come to us this time. I don't know if we did and I missed it, but is it the same service? Because people were complaining, kind of, was it working? So I was trying to give information out to the public about that.
So yes, we do have the same vendors we had last summer, and that should be available on our website. And it'll be the same schedule. The schedule for the beach shuttle service is driven by the Coastal Commission requirements for our residential permit parking program. And we can take a look and make sure that the information about the shuttle is easy to find on our website.
Okay. And then just one thing, just to follow up on what our rec department manager or director, Nikki, was talking about with the Women on Wave statue. I just wanted to personally thank you, the Mayor Morgan, for your grabbing a hold of this and being so instrumental and being kind of a part and being accessible to that. I know the group has been very pleased with your leadership and grabbing it and running with it. So thank you for that.
Very nice. Maybe, Chloe, we can connect you with the gentleman who might be able to give us some background on the website. I'm not sure. I just wanted to thank, it happened last week, but I wanted to thank PD for inviting me once again for the torch run. It was last Thursday. It was very fun. Yeah, I was in front. I carried the flag. It's very important. So I've done it a couple times and hope to be invited back again. And then earlier this week, the community development director, city manager, and I met with the owners of Kings Plaza. It's sort of this new outreach that we're doing with either property owners or business owners as a way to maintain communication with those that do that within our city. So I want to thank Katie and Jamie for doing that with me, and it's a good way to meet new people too. So
I just had one question. Could there be any update that I think the city talked to the Hoopers Beach? Is there any update for the rest of the community about that, about the plaque that we can give now, or would that be at the next council meeting?
No update. Okay.
Staff reached out to them to schedule some time to talk. We do have the plaque. We have, there's plans to.
But the plaque is here.
Yeah.
I guess that's the biggest message.
And staff reached out to them to maybe schedule a time to talk about kind of timing and what the different options are.
Okay.
The original plaque is around.
We have it.
That's all.
Great. Okay. Lovely. All right. Sorry, we're out of order. Now we're on consent. These items can be moved in their entirety unless somebody would like to pull a motion or pull an item.
I move consent
I
items.
didn't want to pull, but I had a comment or a question, so I don't know if you want me to pull the one item or just ask my question before we do.
Yeah, go ahead, ask.
It's regarding item 6C, regarding the pathway, and I was wondering, we've had community outreach, and I was just wondering, is that being addressed, and if maybe you can elaborate on that?
Yes, so this is about the right of entry agreement with Soquel Union School District to build out the path to connect Orchid back to Monterey Park. We have received correspondence from one of the neighbors that they have concerns about it. Staff has reached out multiple times. I believe they had a meeting scheduled for today to meet in the field and talk about options to sort of mitigate concerns that they may have raised about privacy, things like that, talk about fences, talk about hedges, things like that. So I believe it's been rescheduled for next week.
That's all I wanted to make sure.
Okay. Does that meet your motion?
Sure, I'll make my motion to move consent items. Oh, is it?
Public comment?
We don't on consent items.
Oh, we used to. Okay, thank you.
Move items 6A to 6F.
Usually you can say something about consent in open.
Under oral communications is
Right.
the opportunity.
Okay. Right. So we did that. Okay. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Aye. All right. Next general government item 7B. Thank you all for hanging on. 41st Avenue, Clare Street, and Capitola Road Corridor Plan. Recommended action is to adopt a resolution adopting the 41st Avenue, Clare Street, and Capitola Corridor Plan and direct staff to publish a RFP.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight will be, Mariana Ricker is here from SWA, the consultant we hired to do the 41st Avenue corridor study, which expanded into the 41st Avenue, Clare Street, and Capitola Road corridor plan. And so with that, I'm going to let Mariana jump in. And a little fun fact is that Mariana grew up in SoCal, so she's very familiar with these roads and has driven them often over her lifetime. So.
Thank you, Katie. Yes, always fun to get a chance to work in a community that I know well. Thank you, Mayor Morgan and Council, for taking this item. I know it's a long meeting tonight, so I'll go through this quickly. As Katie mentioned, I'm with SWA Group. I'm an associate principal there and a landscape architect and urban designer. Our team has been working closely with city staff on this planning effort. And the full planning document I know has been provided to you all, so I'm going to go quickly through this overview and certainly happy to answer questions towards the end. Just to start briefly with the study area of the plan, as mentioned, this project started focusing only on 41st Avenue. That was the extent of the study area the last time this project was in front of council. And then council requested that the study area be expanded to include Clare Street and Capitola Road as well. And this was really about giving the plan an opportunity to more holistically address and incorporate the future development potential on the Capitola Mall site and the now recently adopted objective design standards for any parcel that undergoes redevelopment on that site. Within these standards, there are criteria for the perimeter streets, which include all three of the corridors in our plan, so that any parcel that fronts on Clare's Capitola Road or 41st would be obligated to have this 20-foot pedestrian realm zone as part of the improvements of that development. So as we start to go through the proposed improvements, the different segments of the corridor that do front on the mall site are taking advantage of this 20-foot zone and incorporating it in different ways. In addition to speaking more with folks from the mall planning team, we've also conducted additional community engagement, met with more stakeholders, and had presentations to both the Art and Culture Commission, and earlier this month, an in-depth session with Planning Commission. Throughout all of those different engagement opportunities, we've been refining the goals of the plan. These 5 goals are really the underpinning of the document and the vision that is laid out in the plan. And just pausing on this here, the corridor plan really is fundamentally a visioning document. The intent is to provide high-level recommendations, typical conditions, and really create a roadmap for the city to be able to follow for future decision-making and implementation of these different improvements. It's not an engineering document. It's not a fully designed set of plans, but it does give that guidance for taking this plan to those next steps down the road. With that, I'll walk through some of the summary of some of the improvements included. Safety is a really huge part of this project. It has been from the very beginning, and that goal of ensuring safe streets for all, safe travel for all is really behind all of the decision-making and the design strategies proposed. Capitola recently completed the local roadway safety plan, and so our team had this information and this data as we were reviewing these corridors in order to be aware of where there's currently issues with both vehicular, pedestrian, and bike collisions. The opportunity of expanding the study area not only allowed us to look more at the mall site, but it also allowed us to really look at the district more as a cohesive network in thinking about how each of the different corridors could support traffic flows and could support different users. So 41st Avenue, particularly the northern portion of it, is a highly auto-centric corridor. It's a major arterial, and it's doing important work of moving vehicles through the city and to and from Highway 1. So recognizing that is the way it is in terms of it being focused primarily on cars, One of the big goals of the plan was to develop a comprehensive bicycle network that provided alternate routes that would take bikes off of the 41st Avenue corridor wherever possible. A couple of the strategies within this network, just to highlight, are 40th Avenue. The plan proposes enhancements and connecting for bikes north-south, and that was discussed and coordinated with the county when we met with them during our stakeholder meetings. And then when we get to the Clare Street bike improvements, those are really about providing that connection from the previously completed public works plans on the east side of 41st on Clare's, and then all of the work completed on Capitola Road as well. I'll go through each of the corridors, spending the most time on Clare's because 41st has been kind of focused on some of the previous discussions. Our scope area for 41st really extends from Highway 1 to Nova's Drive, and we've broken that into 4 distinct zones within the plan, each of which has a set of sort of typical proposed improvements and conditions. As noted, those first 2 zones, the more auto-centric focus ones north of Capitola Road, are primarily going to stay that way. So the plan, recommends maintaining existing curb alignment and really focusing more on restriping and repainting in order to enhance the bike lanes that are there and make things, more visible and safer, but not fundamentally change anything about how this portion of the corridor functions. And within Zone 1, some of that work is already planned to start happening this summer with the Public Works project that was kind of underway already, but has been coordinated with this planning document. Moving down towards the mall site, again, the roadway treatment is fairly similar to what is shown in Zone 1, but in looking at that mall side of the street, there is that 20-foot zone where there's an opportunity to expand the public realm. What that gives us in this area is a generous planting buffer to provide more space and separation for pedestrians using the sidewalk and from cars in the street. It also provides areas for street furnishing and activation along the building frontage. And wherever you see this little graphic snipped included in these slides, that's pulled directly from the objective design standards. So that's what parcels redeveloping on the mall site are held to. Moving south of Capitola Road, zones 3 and 4, traffic volumes start to slow down, and there's more opportunities for more of a multimodal approach to this portion of 41st Avenue. So here in these zones, we are looking at adjusting the curb and narrowing the travel lanes to provide either buffered bike lanes or separated bike lanes and extend that sidewalk, add street trees, just generally enhance the public realm and make this a little bit more of a pedestrian-oriented portion of the corridor as you move towards Pleasure Point. Moving on to Clare Street, the existing conditions on Clare Street present a number of safety challenges. I think everyone knows that piece from 40th and the mall to 41st is just a mess all the time. The curving nature of the road and the lack of crossings, there's no pedestrian crossing between 40th and Bay Federal, encourages a lot of people to jaywalk, which causes safety issues for pedestrians. And from a bike perspective, it's sharrows. So there's just sharrows in that right lane, and depending on whether or not drivers respect that, can make it an uncomfortable bike experience. The other challenge with Clare Street is that it's a really space-constrained section. So this is, again, that first kind of challenging block closest to 41st, where there's multiple turn lanes, and we're really limited curb to curb. It's already, used to its fullest capacity. Moving through the main part of the corridor, there's the median, but that's regularly serving as a center turn lane to get in and out of the different centers along Clare Street. And so there's also a pretty limited space condition here. And again, that's where you're seeing the sharrows in the right lane, but they're really not that wide. And there's no dedicated bike infrastructure. The other challenge that Clare's faces that's a little bit different from the two corridors is that the parcels and the parcel ownership along the Clare Street frontage is much more diverse than the parcels that front on 41st and Capitola Road. So the feasibility of sort of more of a comprehensive redevelopment that would trigger that 20-foot zone is less likely on Clare Street. So all that being said, our Clare Street approach starts very similar to our 41st Avenue one, breaking it up into zones that have similar conditions. Zone 1 is kind of everything near 41st and 40th, and then zone 2 really represents the rest of the corridor, which is pretty consistent all the way down to Capitola Road. But the other thing that the plan proposes for Clare Street is the consideration of a near-term option in addition to the long-term vision. The near-term option is based on traffic counts that were collected for today's uses, and is really trying to solve for that challenge of the constrained roadway and wanting to address some of the most pressing safety concerns right now. So the near-term plan wouldn't move any curbs. It would look at adding 2 new mid-block crossings, which addresses that jaywalking concern. And then it looks at using restriping of the roadway to reallocate some of that 58-foot width, reducing the number of travel lanes, but gaining dedicated bike lanes in both directions. This is intentionally flexible, so it doesn't really impact the long-term results, which ultimately would leverage that entire frontage along the mall site in the same way that 41st and Capitola Road would. But in this case, where we're looking at that 20-foot zone, we're looking at actually realigning the curbs to move them closer towards the mall parcels. And in doing so, in some cases, that might be shifting the curb over as much as 11 feet into that area, into that 20-foot zone. Or in the sort of middle zone 2 section, you could only move it 5, and you'd be able to retain travel at 2 travel lanes in both directions, maintain the center turn lane, and get bike lanes in both directions. But it really is relying on the ability to move that curb over. And as you can see in both of these sections, moving the curb to the right-of-way line or even beyond it, you would no longer have a sidewalk if you did that today. So you really do need these additional improvements to be happening on the private side. Lastly, with Capitola Road, this was recently worked on with the project to enhance the bicycle infrastructure along there. So there's really no improvements recommended within the roadway itself. The primary improvements for Capitola Road within this plan are looking at things like improving the median planting, identifying locations for public art or for monument signage. And then it's just at that zone 2, right along the mall site, that would essentially match the condition on 41st, where again, you're getting that nice planted buffer to provide space between pedestrians and cars and the activation along the building frontage. Oop, too far forward. The last chapter of the plan is also about district placemaking. This was something that came up in a lot of our early community engagement of there not really being an identity to this part of Capitola, and large part, the mall could be anywhere. And so this chapter really aims at thinking about district placemaking and branding and bringing that unique Capitola identity to this area. The placemaking strategy really has sort of 4 components. There's wayfinding and gateway monuments, several locations identified. There's the opportunity for expanded public art, particularly looking at those medians, not only on 41st, but also on Capitola Road or perhaps even Clare's. There's a proposed material and furnishing palette that could be rolled out throughout the corridor, anywhere that there's those public realm enhancements occurring. And then there's also proposed understory and tree planting palette lists included. Some of the locations identified for the monument opportunities are to the north, coming off the highway, to the west when you're coming from Santa Cruz, and then to the south. And the plan includes sort of a range of different options. What this looks like could be any number of things. Could be a collaboration with public art. Some of these are showing collaboration with a private property owner, but really these are just highlighting locations where there could be some sort of welcoming element to this district and to the city of Capitola in general. All of these are essentially at the city-county line. And then lastly, the notion of branding concepts. So with that notion of identity, all of these different placemaking strategies would be in support of a cohesive branding concept. We presented 2 different options to the community with the survey earlier this year. We got over 300 responses, but on this particular question, they were pretty split. So in discussions with Planning Commission earlier this month, the suggestion was made to use the mountains and bluffs concept sort of in the northern portion, north of Capitola Road, and then transition to the gateway to the shore concept as you move towards Pleasure Point. So each of these branding concepts are explained a little bit more in the document, but they have sort of a cohesive color palette and an accompanying set of planting proposals that would support that. So this mountains and bluffs leans more sort of oaks and natives, sort of woodlands. And then the gateway to shore concept is a little bit more beachy and featuring palms as sort of that identifier. Just to wrap up on next steps, and again, can certainly go back to any of this as there are questions. But as I said at the beginning, the goal of this plan is really to be a roadmap for the future and for future implementation. So while we are at the end of our planning process right now, this is hopefully just the beginning for work to occur in this district. As mentioned, there's already some things that are underway that have been coordinated with the planning document, but this would set the city up to identify and prioritize specific projects. This is not all going to happen at once. There'd be ongoing stakeholder engagement specific to any users impacted by that work. There could be additional studies as needed, particularly on the traffic side. And then there would be the process of developing full shovel-ready engineering plans so the city could be positioned to go out for funding. And with that, I will pass it back to Katie.
Okay, thank you. And so while this is going on, there has been multiple studies and projects that also have been influencing the outcome within our project. Just recently, the local roadway safety plan was adopted by the city council with a focus on safety in the future and setting new goals. Our objective design standards for the mall wrapped up during this process as well, this early this year. The 41st Avenue Pavement Rehabilitation Project was already in the planning, had already been planned when we launched this, so we were aware of that project moving forward. There were recommendations within this plan, like removing a possible left-hand turn that is a safety issue, that due to the timing, we don't have it in that update for the rehab because that's so much further ahead of this corridor plan, but hopefully in the future that's something we can address. Removing a left-hand turn requires a lot of public outreach and community engagement. So there wasn't the time with knowing that project was moving forward. We also got grant funding for the Capitola ATP, the Active Transportation Plan. So I think that began about a month or two ago. So that is also happening, and that's in the area around 41st Avenue. So that will also work with this plan for greater connectivity. And Santa Cruz Metro is working on a rapid corridor plan, which we've also connected with them. But a lot of transportation-focused projects, to say the least. And we've tried to incorporate them the best we can into this corridor plan. But I just wanted to note that as we were working on it, there's a couple of the first pages on how many different plans were considered in this process. So next slide, please. So our recommendation tonight is to adopt a resolution adopting the 41st Avenue, Clare Street, and Capitola Road Corridor Plan, and to direct staff to publish an RFP for an AB 1600 Nexus study to establish a corridor impact fee program and to help fund future projects within the corridor. This evening, if the council is not ready to move ahead with adoption of the plan, I know we've gotten a couple public outreach comments and concerns that have come up. I would still recommend that you have staff move forward with the RFP process because we don't need to have this adopted in order to start advertising an RFP if you feel comfortable with that. So with that, we are here and ready for any questions you may have.
Great, thank you both. Councilmember Park, any questions?
Thank you for the presentation. It's nice to see a living project coming along. My question is that the Browns Ranch management had some problems. Have we reached out to them? Are we continuing to work on that to let them know that this is a living plan and that it's subject to change?
Yes, the reason why the letter came in is because I had reached out to the owner of Brown's Ranch, and they have been notified of our stakeholder meetings along the way. But at that point, he was not aware of the document being heard by city council. I will say I emailed earlier, but not all, with email, it doesn't always go through, but we're happy to sit down with him and work through plans. And that, yeah, so he is aware, and we've also offered to meet with him.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, that was my question as well, whether we did the outreach to the owners of Brown's Ranch and how many attempts there were in the past and whether he was responsive to any of them in the past.
Yeah, so we have a great working relationship, and they, since Claire's was added on, they've been notified of any stakeholder meetings we've had and been sent updates to plans as they became available for Planning Commission and City Council.
Great. I do have a few more questions. Can we have developers pay impact fees if we do not have a nexus study?
No, the first step is to do a nexus study.
Thank you. So if there was an application by Malone Geyer Partners next month, would we be able to have them pay into impact fees without having adopted a corridor plan and completed the nexus study?
So if we were to get an application next month, it would have to go through an entitlement process in which we wouldn't charge the impact fees. That occurs at the time of building permit. So there would be.
So there is still time to, how long does it usually take to do a nexus study?
With our housing impact study, the nexus study, I want to say that was somewhere between a maybe 3 and 6 month process.
And this would evaluate the impact kind of globally, right, of the development. So traffic as well as streets, as well as public safety.
We'll look at what is in the corridor plan and what's proposed for improvements.
Oh, so just the roads and.
Yeah, and then look at what the fair share of any new development should be towards those improvements. And it would also look at the fact that this is a regional corridor and the users are not only the mall site, but also other businesses up 41st Avenue, as well as regional visitation.
It still seems that time is of the essence, given we do not know when an application will come before us, that we have this nexus study done.
You would definitely want your nexus study and your fees adopted before a building application come in.
Okay, and how long does that usually take? Like from application of a project to the building permit?
It would depend, but on the project and how they, if they brought it in phases, or it's really hard to say with the mall. But the process that is set up is that they would have they'd have their community meeting first, and then with the objective standards that are in place, it would go to Planning Commission with recommendation to City Council. So,
Jamie, you want to say something?
Forgive me, is that something we double checked with our AB 1600 fee specialists about the timing? My understanding is that it was for the deemed complete stage of an application. You had to have your AB 1600 fees established.
Oh, I did not check that with I just know the fee, I believe the fee needs to be in place when you apply for the building permit.
Can we get back?
Circle
to
back.
Yeah.
So those are two different things.
Those are two
right?
different things. Yes,
If we
complete comes much earlier in the process. Than the building permit.
Okay, great. That will be a great clarification. I am really excited about the slide where we're identifying different ways and safer ways for bike to travel, and identifying 40th as one. And it sounds like you've been working with the county to kind of open up 40th and redesigning it in a way that it is bike safe. I'm curious whether we have thought about or talked about opening up 40th Avenue as a through street for car traffic as well.
So that has been a comment that has been made throughout this process, and I know that when I'm going to, Jamie, if you wouldn't mind, I know there was a lot of work and discussion on this when the hospital was being considered along the frontage road, and I wasn't part of those conversations, but I do know that was explored. Do you want to expand?
Sure, and welcome the public works director up here if she has anything else to add. So the 40th was closed, I believe it was when the mall was built. It's closed by the county. It's a county gate. It's not a city gate. So it's not a city gate. It's not a city decision to take it down or put it up. It's a county decision. The city issued a letter when the Kaiser facility was being planned on frontage road, requesting the county include in their EIR a study of opening 40th up and what that would look like. They didn't do that traffic analysis to show that. So at this point, we've heard for years the city has said, hey, we think opening that would probably help. We don't have solid traffic data to show what it would do to different intersections. But it has been a city position in the past we've asked the county to do, and the county has so far declined to do so. But it is something we could obviously revisit with the county.
I'm just curious, since there's conversations about opening up 40th for bike lanes and improvements, whether we can throw that in there too.
There was definitely support for the bike lane from the county through.
Yeah, I mean, I just think about, living in that area. A lot of times, if I can just cut through 40th, and if my destination is Brown's Ranch, I can just go on 40th and get to Brown's Ranch versus having to go on 41st. I mean, the traffic on 41st is terrible already. Not everyone needs to be on 41st to get to where they need to be. So I think that would improve just the movement of cars in our community and decrease the impact on 41st.
Let's see. I guess my first question would be, I understand the importance of getting the RFP out, and so that can be separated as part of this. My second part of my question is around that outreach part that was done. You said that there was outreach done after the time that the drawings were done, then they were all sent back out. I was just wondering where it just responding to like a big stakeholder like the Browns Market Ranch on where the breakdown might have happened and what is our point of like recovering to a stakeholder that degree. And then also like, have we heard from Marlone Geyer or the other businesses along there? We all know emails come in and they sit and get lost or something. So I was wondering what that outreach looked like.
Yeah, I have been emailing all of the stakeholders along Claire's when in advance of the Planning Commission meeting and at the time of the Planning Commission meeting in advance, that email also included information on this meeting occurring 3 weeks later. So and there were links to the current plan at that time. And then prior to this meeting, I sent out another email with links to the updated plan and a reminder that we're having this meeting tonight. So, and throughout for the stakeholder meetings, it's been a similar experience. The difference is that having all those emails, I was able to plug in, send them a calendar invite, which is much more successful than just sending an email. And we had a pretty good turnout with our stakeholder meetings. So there has been a lot of reaching out and engagement, but unfortunately, that I don't know if it was just not being available and why they couldn't participate in previous meetings. So.
And you said we have a tight relationship. Has there been reached by a phone call, and that's not being responsive, or is it all just email right now?
Preparing for this meeting, I got worried that they haven't been participating in the process. So yes, I picked up I sent actually an email just asking if they had a little time for a phone call and discussed it and wanted to make sure that they'd be able to provide comments on the plan since they probably own about a quarter to a third of the frontage along Clare Street on the outer end. And Marlone Geyer has, they've been notified throughout the process as well and are aware of the fact that we've been moving forward with a corridor plan.
Sure. And this again, just from just a personal standpoint, I remember about a year and a half ago or something, you gave me a half your afternoon. We went out walking, and I think we had another planning commissioner there, and we really talked about what the 41st Avenue corridor is looking at. And I really thought I knew safety is obviously the most important thing, but there's really a focus on how we're going to rebrand our city, and that does 41st turn into this. That's the way you get to Capitola kind of a thing. And just looking at this report as I looked through it, which I don't want to say safety is not important, it definitely is, but the focus that it seems like it was so much put into the safe travels and everything, and then from the part about the rebranding, I was wondering, how does that phase into this? Because I thought that was like really dived into our economic development plan and making it look better. And I know we looked at the center islands and all this stuff, and not just a drawing of like, do we want mountains or something like that? And I thought there was going to be a little more focus on that. And I was wondering, is that later in the stage, in the process, or what?
I can speak to some of that. So in addition to some of what I showed here, there are some design guidelines and standards in the plan as well that would sort of reinforce, some of these things and lay out, elements like frequency and placement and consistency throughout the corridor that gets at that, how do you accomplish a unique identity. You need to make sure that things are consistent and recognizable. And so the design guidelines do aim to provide more beyond just the sort of high level concepts. I do think, though, a full-on wayfinding strategy or the design and development of what those monuments are would be, a dedicated process with, a signage consultant, for example, or, working with public art to put out an RFP or, however the city decides to go about making these ideas something that is, a real design. I do think that would be another step in the process for the wayfinding piece. But the design guidelines do aim to take it, a little bit further in terms of criteria for where those would go and how frequent and things like that.
I sat in a meeting yesterday with business anchors, and they were talking about how to, the new trend and how the short term of people coming to stay is like, less than 2 days. And so, and they said the key part about is making an impression of your community or a hotel or, whatever the attraction is. And so that somebody takes that away, and the reason why they want to come back. And so, just going back to what I thought a lot of the focus was how this turns into economic development, and that people, businesses want to come here because the corridor's so beautiful and there was an investment, made forward. And then my last question, and I'll move on. Looking at where we are in this, I think sometimes, just an observation, we have a plan like this comes forward, and then it gets turned in, and there's a little bit of excitement about it, and then we go out and write a grant, and then all of a sudden now there's money, and then like this was approved at a council level, but then it goes into, oh, we got a grant now, we have $2 million, and let's do something, and there hasn't been a lot of things. So I was wondering, is there a secondary step in here that we could do a grant to do more engineering to see all these ideas viable and how do those really work? And at the same time, that becomes more of a document that we can work with Marlon Guy or hand that to him, and how does that come? So is there a way to slow the process? I know our staff is always gung-ho about getting as much money as we possibly can, but sometimes getting as much money as we possibly can and then having issues, kind of creates, I think, some frustration in our community.
Yeah, so they say there's nothing more permanent than a temporary solution sometimes. So we definitely want to take caution before you move forward. With a corridor plan, it's really a high-level planning document. The next steps that we would take is to study. So say if we wanted to move forward with the lower part of 41st Avenue, where we're suggesting to have some parking along the street, create bulb outs at Bromer, and make that area more pedestrian friendly and expand the sidewalks. We would want to first hire an engineering consultant team, as well as do more public outreach during that process to make sure the final design, we have a vision, but we need to make sure all the turning pockets are correct and just get it down to engineering plans, and also make sure that at that point you're working within a block or 2 blocks and really targeting those companies, businesses and property owners along those two areas before moving forward with a construction project. So
that's all I have at this time.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. So how did you decide who were the stakeholders?
All of the businesses along that corridor, we also reached out to like Chamber of Commerce, Visit Santa Cruz. There was a variety of stakeholders, but in talking about Clare Street, there was definitely every property owner or the along that corridor we reached out to. But we also were working, like I had contacts at Ross and Olive Garden of current people working within the buildings as well as tenants.
Yeah. For me, process is important for me. And we've talked a lot about economic development in our community. And I think, coming up with plans like this can serve a real purpose, certainly can help us if we're going to try and do a nexus study to get some fees to make these kinds of things happening. But I actually reached out to some of the businesses because I think the first step in economic development is to keep the businesses that you have and not to do things that's going to hinder them or, make their business go downhill. And for me, I was a little surprised because I agree with Councilmember Jensen. When this process started, what we were talking about was the whole placemaking issue. I remember I was on the Planning Commission at the time and, walking the entire length of 41st Avenue, and this was all about placemaking. And suddenly the shift seems to have shifted so that the most important part of the plan is, how do we fit bike lanes in? And while I think we're all in favor of safety, we're all in favor of improving access, because I agree with Councilmember Orbach, riding a bicycle on 41st Avenue must be just awful. And I would like to see a way that, we could get more people off of 41st Avenue. But we have a number of things going on right now. We're requiring the mall to put in a bicycle lane, I think, from the 38th Avenue entrance over to close to the 40th Avenue if they come in with their project. And I did reach out to some of the businesses that are on Claire's beyond Bob Rivers, who's with Brown Bulb Ranch, like the new furniture store that's in there, Iron Horse. And I think they're a great new tenant and, bring a lot of economic vitality to that area. And they knew nothing about this. And the businesses within Brown Ranch itself knew nothing about this. And businesses like Trader Joe's often have requirements about, how traffic works in front of their store for them to locate there and for them to stay there. So I do think, while I'm not criticizing your plan, I'm sort of criticizing the process and how we've gotten there. And so for me, I do think it's extremely important to slow adopting the plan down a little bit so that we can have some communications not only with the property owners, because most of the businesses out there don't own the property where the businesses are. So I think we've got to interact with the business people as well as the property owners. I think that, we need to make certain that, we have some contact with the mall, because a good part of, what's going to be done depends on the mall. And it may turn out that, doing the Clare Street and going to one lane would be a fabulous idea, and the traffic numbers show that that will work out there. I just don't think that tonight we're at that place. So for me, I think that, are you signaling to me to do something? Oh, okay. For me, I would like to see us say, looks like we have a pretty good plan. Looks like we have some great ideas. In going through, because I did go back and listen to the Planning Commission's presentation as well, and in the document that we have tonight, and I actually brought some copies for my fellow council members, in the Planning Commission report, there are different widths of the right-of-way than are in our right-of-way and in what was presented to the council. And so I think, before I'm willing to adopt a plan, I would at least like, some of the numbers to be right. And I can show you this because what the Planning Commission got was a drawing with 9-foot lane widths. And it's my understanding that they decided that and with the 9-foot lane widths, we showed that the right-of-way was 98 feet. And then the council got a copy of the exact same pages, and the right-of-way width is changed going to 10 lanes. So I think there's still a few details that need to be worked out. And this is not saying that this plan won't ultimately be adopted, but it's.
I would like to respond to that if we could, because we did, this is one of the changes we made between Planning Commission and City Council, realizing a mistake. And
Yeah, I can speak to that. So there's no lanes proposed that are under 10 feet, and that's consistent with, coordination, buses, et cetera. And so that has been corrected. That was on the zone 1, and there was a discrepancy trying to align that existing, the project that's a Caltrans plan. And so that has been corrected. That was a discrepancy between the plan and what those engineered drawings that are moving forward with construction was showing.
What concerned me more was the right-of-way width changed.
Yes, that was an error that has been corrected.
Okay. So, I just, for me, I'm not ready to adopt the document tonight until we do a little better job, communicating with our business community and making certain that they're comfortable with what's going on, or at least know what's going on so they can make appropriate business decisions. I do understand they need to go ahead and do the RFP to try and move forward with doing the Nexus study. And so it seems like, in the next meeting or the meeting after that, if we can get it adopted within that time, then we would still be fine. So those are my comments for now.
Great. I have no questions. We can go to public comment on this item. Anybody wish to speak?
Appreciate the opportunity to speak. And again, very professional and thorough report. 129 pages of report to read and digest on a holiday week is a lot, and rendering a directive decision tonight would be really fast. I just want to, and it might be a little bit in the weeds, but as a member of the public who shops and does things on 41st Avenue and lives in Capitola, there were a couple of concerns that I had. And first, I wanted to make a point of eliminating, going from 2 lanes to 1 lane. I know it doesn't make common sense to a lot of people, but when they did it on Capitola Road between here and through Live Oak, it really did slow down traffic, but improve traffic flow. The big difference is that on Claire's, you've got a number of businesses that are going to require that traffic turn right or turn left. And that is going to slow down the flow and congest the traffic. So I think it needs a lot more looking at that. I don't remember the removal of any left-hand turn lanes in the change in Capitola Road that happened. But we're talking about eliminating left-hand turn lanes on 41st Avenue that right now are used a lot. I use them a lot, and I see people pulling U-turns. So if you go in, I drove to Splash Car Wash yesterday, trying to analyze the impact of removing that proposed removal of a left-hand turn lane. And I think it would be really bad for the businesses. I don't think that it's in the plan even that the Gross Road intersection can handle the increase in all of the U-turns of people coming out of the car wash, coming out of Kentucky Fried Chicken and all of that, and trying to go back into town instead of going across the bridge or jumping on the freeway to go down to Bay or that kind of stuff. So I really request that you guys take a little bit more time before you adopt it and look at some of those details And having heard the whole discussion about Claire's Avenue, I will just stand down. Businesses really need to weigh in on that because it could get really difficult. It's not only a local transportation corridor, but the commute traffic. When you watch it, people go on Claire's to avoid the Capitola Road 41st intersection. And that intersection is already so congested that it's a good thing they do that. You don't want to make it so that they don't. And the interim plan allows for the bike lanes, but it's pretty apparent that it's not the optimum solution because they take it back to 2 lanes in the long-term plan. So maybe we could skip the interim plan, go for a long-term plan that'll really work, and maybe focus on 41st Avenue and restriping and making it safer as you do Capitola Road. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, welcome.
Good evening, Paula Bradley. The plan and this 41st Avenue clears and the mall redevelopment are the biggest planning efforts ever for Capitola, and will be a long-range plan for the future, requiring vision and embracing a different Capitola. The council needs to make informed, forward-thinking decisions to promote bicycle and pedestrian safety. Bold decisions are needed to choose bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure over status quo, car-centric, high-speed traffic plans of the last century, which we're living with 41st Avenue now. We need complete streets, protected bike lanes, and reduced speeds on 41st Ave and Claire's for safety, or low-risk users will not ride there. I'm not low-risk or inexperienced rider, and I don't ride on 41st. Lower speeds result in less injuries and fatalities. The wide multi-lane arterials encourage speeding. We're way behind the curve with the unanticipated explosion of e-bike users and many new inexperienced cyclists. It's a benefit to all to improve infrastructure so more will walk or ride instead of drive, improving their health, decreasing congestion and carbon emissions. Improved public transportation in this corridor will also be a critical part of the equation. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, welcome.
Hello, Cami Corvin, resident Capitola and also business owner. I want to start off with acknowledging Councilmember Westman's concerns, and I will agree with her. I have a business on 41st Avenue. I live on 38th in Capitola, and I shop right there. So everything's in my little 1 block radius or 1 mile radius. I have a tendency not to go outside of it, apparently, but a lot of concerns that I have. I agree that you need to slow this down in the aspect that, first and foremost, safety, obviously. Secondly is the budget. Again, we keep coming back to the budget and how important this is. We have a mall development that will be coming in a few years. And what I would hate to see is a lot of money being spent and put out into this type of a situation where 5 or 10 years from now, we have to redo it and we have to add more money. So maybe we need to look at what can we get away with minimally and what would still look aesthetically great for 41st Avenue and Claire's. Now, my other concern that I have is living on 38th by the tracks, as I say. If you look at the district D map, the mobile home park there, it looks like a kitchen sink with a garbage disposal hanging down. That's where we live. So it's kind of in an awkward area. And with the new housing that will be coming in across the street, which I'm very grateful that's going to be coming in, there's going to be more impact on traffic coming down 38th. As some of the members here in the community have mentioned, I am one of those people that take 41st to Claire's to go down to Capitola to 38th because I do not want to come down 41st. It just takes longer. It's not necessary. I think we need to look at the traffic impact that this will have, not just in the Claire's, Capitola, 41st Avenue, but a little bit further for the residents that are there that will be using that whole area. And I think that that's going to be huge. So I do have some concerns with that, and I would, again, echo Councilmember Westman's thing for that. So I thank you tonight, and God bless. Have a great night.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak? All right. Seeing none, we'll come back to council. Any comments, deliberation?
Yeah, my comment is that I believe it is a good plan, and I like the way things are going, but we need to take the time to talk to all the business owners, not just the property owners. So I think to slow it down, to make sure we do these things would be good. That's my comment for now. Thanks.
I want to express my gratitude to staff and our consultants for not only their hard work on this study, but also bringing this back to us with authorization for an RFP for a Nexus study. This is how we make sure that visioning plans actually result in tangible change that can improve our community. I think this action will lay groundwork. Adopting this will lay groundwork for our city to adopt impact fees so we can ensure that the future development along 41st Corridor will pay their fair share for the infrastructure improvements we need to ensure safety for bicyclists, pedestrians, and drivers. There's no roadway improvements we can make that will mitigate the traffic impacts of thousands of new housing units built in our city and around our surrounding areas. But what we can do by taking some action tonight is to ensure that our existing and future residents have access to bicycle and pedestrian infrastructure that is safe, accessible, and connected to all the goods, services, and amenities that our city has to offer. The improvements identified in the study, especially along Clare Street, will address long-standing safety issues in that area with minimal impacts on automobile traffic. I've never seen significant traffic between the Clare Street intersections at Capitola Road and at 40th Avenue. So it's a logical corridor to prioritize bicycle and pedestrian safety improvements with little to no impact on nearby businesses. Although I do agree to continue conversations with our stakeholders to discuss how we may mitigate their concerns. As someone who regularly commutes on bicycle in that area, along with many others and hopefully even more in the future, I strongly support the study, the proposed improvements, and the safety benefits it will bring to our community. I don't know who has tried to bike on Claire's, but I have. This Sharrow it's very unsafe, it's terrible. We are oftentimes on the sidewalk, which is then unsafe for pedestrians. So something needs to happen before another accident happens. I think delaying this decision will increase the likelihood that there's possibly an application submitted in the Capitola Mall site. And if an application is submitted, we won't have, like I said, the impact fees in place and we'll run the risk of getting no funding for public infrastructure from the largest project to ever be built in Capitola. I hear my council members in the concern about adopting this tonight. I think there is room for more dialogue to reach out to more stakeholders to see what we can do to mitigate their concerns. But I believe this is a great move forward, and we definitely should put out the RFP for the Nexus study.
I just had one more question for the consultant. You know, we had crosswalks on Clare Street and they were taken out because there were so many accidents there. So I was wondering why now we've decided to put crosswalks back there.
Claire's is a tricky street because of that curve, and so there's visibility considerations. I don't remember where the crosswalks used to be, but the placement of the ones proposed in the plan, we did discuss that with Public Works as well as with the traffic engineer on our team to make sure that we were far enough away from other intersections and as far as we could be from that like blind spot on the curve. Or Katie, if you have more background.
So the existing crossing, I believe, is
it was close to where the end of the wall is. I would say just sort of down between Macy's and sort of Target, that area there.
I think
right to the food, right, he's maybe correct.
And this is more, the proposed spot is in alignment with the rear side of the building, like a little bit beyond the food court where the back side of, or I don't know if you call it the back side of Target is. So it's a little bit moved over, but I do know that during the process, it was definitely looked at for safety reasons and why it was moved from the current location. So it's not in alignment with the same place. It's kind of closer to Target.
It splits the difference more between the two intersections. One of the concerns is when the crosswalks are too close to one another can cause problems for traffic flows and safety. So it splits the difference. That's why it moves closer to Capitola Road in this plan.
Does seem to me if we go forward with the crosswalks, we might want to have Mayor Morgan's blinky lights that she likes to have on them, because
Those are in the plans.
because it is a little fast. Yeah, I think for me that it's important to take a little bit more time to look at this. As I said, I think it's, I understand, the property owners are the property owners, but I do think the businesses, particularly along Clare Street, need to, have time to digest this and interact. For me, I think maybe we ought to, hand out a flyer to the businesses along Clare Street with one of the fancy code things that you can use on your phone to, actually get access to the plans and let people look at that. As I said earlier, I'm not, 100% objecting to the plan itself. I'm just objecting to the fact that I think that we need to have a little more input from our business community before we go forward with this. And I certainly don't think in the next month that we're going to get an application in from the mall people. You certainly could contact them and ask them that question and bring that back to us. So we haven't heard from Councilmember Jensen, so I won't make a motion until I hear from him.
Thank you. Maybe just to take one step back, Katie, and maybe you can educate me with the projects that are going on in Capitola right now. So and I just wrote down, we have the 41st Avenue project that's going to start in a couple weeks up by Gross Road. We have the mall project that's being designed. My fellow council members, I think the last meeting voted unanimously to remove the roundabouts and redesign or input on Bay Avenue. Our Public Works Department, I understand, is going to be submitting a grant or a grant process about Cliffwood Heights. Councilmember Clark and myself sit on the ATP grant and the ATP multimodal, study that is going to be starting now, which we haven't even had our first meeting. And then there's a short-term and long-term thing. How does all this wrap in? Capitola, it sounds like Capitola is huge, and we get down to this 1.7 miles. How does the master plan of all these things fall in, other than us having bits and pieces? And I go back to the bits and pieces on Bay Avenue. We say let's do something, and then we say, oh, it's grant money, but really it's kind of not, because then we have to pay money to take it out, and people say they weren't included. But then how does that affect them? And so how does this, as you're the director of planning, how does this all wrap into one cohesive thing that when we make a decision, we're not making it that there's a certain standard in one area on the town and how they all fall together?
Sure. In an ideal world, we'd study the whole city and we'd figure out how to make it perfect and how everything would function together just perfectly. But due to time and also funding, that's not a possibility. So whenever you're planning, you really want to create long-range plans that talk about the future. I'm really excited that we have an ATP grant right now that will give us a better understanding of the connectivity throughout the city. But as a city, and due to limited resources, we do have to plan incrementally. It's great to have a corridor plan and then follow it piece by piece as you get the grant funds and have the funding to further study it and utilize engineers. But it's not a perfect world that we could study it all at once. We're doing the best we can. In this planning process, we did reach out to our regional partners, knowing that this part of town is very well connected to, it leads into the county. And then looking at their ATP and also connecting with Metro. So really, we did try to look at the overall picture. And as you were seeing in some of the maps of alternative routes to 41st. So it wasn't that you always want to look not only just at the corridor you're studying, but the area around it, which we tried to do within this plan.
Thank you for that. One of the things you said was timing. And so, what is timing? I mean, timing is a rush to do it. Timing is to go at a pace that we do it once and do it right. And when timing, do you feel pressure as like timing that this has to be immediately done? Other than, we could all sit up here and make allegations that, oh, maybe somebody might get hurt, which we understand that, and obviously we want to move forward to make it as safe as we can. But what is timing?
So in terms of this plan, the timing would be, for the next steps would really be to incorporate the work of an engineer, do more public outreach for each segment, as I said. No, you do not want to rush through the project, but you're also on timelines when you get grant money. So you have to complete your grants within a certain amount of time. But, we don't want to make any bad decisions. So you definitely want to take enough time to have a public process. And
Am I missing? We don't have a grant for this project right now, right?
No.
No. So
no.
Okay.
There was discussion, I think, at the last meeting and reallocation of how possibly money could be utilized for Claire's. And I'm not sure so bringing the Claire's near-term plan forward, we understand how sensitive that is after the improvements at Bay Avenue, and it was a hard decision whether or not to even bring that forward. But knowing that we want to give you the best information we have to make the best decisions. And when we realized how constrained that corridor is, we felt we should bring something forward that shows a multimodal.
So that if the allocation happened, that money could be used into engineering to look at what this plan would look like.
Yeah, I'm going to need the assistance of our Public Works Director for that portion.
Hi, good evening, Mayor and Council members. So the SS4A grant is an implementation grant. So they are construction funds. So no, you cannot do design work with that grant. However, that's also a grant for the whole city. So could they be used on different projects within town? Yes.
Right, thank you. And then just to follow up, Councilmember Orbach was asking about our experiences of, just so, I completely understand with Claire's. My wife and I walk it, I think we're up to probably 6 times a week out from one side of town to the other. And also I bike it probably at least 2 to 3 times a week. So I understand those impacts. I understand what those needs look like. With the, where we are today, Katie, the most time-sensitive critical piece tonight that you're looking for is approval to have the RFP process going, right? And so that's the most critical part. And then we could look at doing the outreach part as a follow-up and then have that come back. I guess just with that, my concern, and I don't know how we could come as a council together. My concern always is that we approve it, it goes away, and then all of a sudden our amazing staff goes out and writes a grant, and then we have this grant money and we have to then start this design process, or that, oh, well, it was approved. And so I just want to be cautious that we're improving a conceptual design at one time that we're going to build off of after we have engineering drawings and to make sure it does work. Is that correct?
That's correct.
All right. Those are all my comments I have.
Great. Yes, I agree that it's important for us to get this RFP out there. I would like to see with some more outreach. I think the idea of like a physical card mailer to all the businesses. I know it's hard because it is very impacted with lots of different businesses there. So I just definitely want not only property owners, but business owners as well to be aware of what's on the table. And I do like this design. I really appreciate it. And I want to focus on safety along with, us personalizing Capitola in a way that works for us. So I'm wondering if we have some ideas of moving forward.
I do have a couple other comments.
Sure.
Here, Morgan, if I may. I just have a question about whether we need to, because, I know this has come up in the previous budget meeting where, because we have to, originally I think Director Khan was applying for the Safe Streets for All grant for the roundabout plan, but now she has to probably redo the application for the Bay Ave crosswalk with an additional potential for the 1 million allocation to Claire's. I just want to make sure, do we need to adopt this plan in order to get grant funding for the project?
So for a lot of grant opportunities, you do have to have an adopted plan and show where you did the public process and the whole thing. For the Safe Streets for All grant, no, this doesn't need to be an adopted document. It does need to be a city project, but not all city projects are in an adopted, long-term range plan.
Got it.
Does that answer the question?
Yes. I just want to make sure that not adopting tonight doesn't jeopardize our grant opportunity, right? And I know, there were comments about there being a long-term plan, and I know the long-term plan, but it also sounds like it's really complicated because we have so many different property owners along Claire's. Whether a long-term plan is going to ever happen is a question, whether it's 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years. So I can't bank on long-term plans to make sure my child or me or Councilmember Jensen and his family doesn't die riding the bike on Clare Street. So I really, really think it's important for us to think about these short-term plans as well to improve our bike infrastructure here in the city to make sure our residents are safe. So I think it's a priority for us to do that. But yes, we can take the time to talk to the business owners and wait for their comments to adjust the plan the way it should be adjusted. But I think we should move to publish an RFP for the impact fees and come back with after outreach to the businesses. And that's my motion.
I'll second that.
Great, we have a second.
Can I clarify on the motion? So just the RFP, we're going to continue to have the outreach to the businesses and the property owners.
Good. Yeah, I'd like to propose an amendment to the motion. I would like it to include that the staff comes back with more clear information about the impact fees and do they go into effect, when the building permit's issued or that kind of thing, so that we have a little more information to make our decisions on if the maker.
I think that's a great idea, and also come back with whatever outreach efforts and any proposed changes to the plan would be great.
Absolutely.
Great. May we have a roll call, please?
Councilmember Clark,
Aye.
Councilmember Orbach,
Aye.
Councilmember Westman,
Aye.
Councilmember Vice Mayor Jensen,
Aye.
and Mayor Morgan.
Aye. Great. Passes unanimously. Thank you so much for the presentation. It'll take us to item 7C, which is our undergrounding utility district number 6 in regards to the Rule 20A program. We're receiving information.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. So a little background on what Rule 20A is. So the Rule 20A program is overseen by the CPUC, the California Public Utilities Commission, for using utility-funded credits. So those are money paid by ratepayers to do undergrounding in certain districts. The program has been going on since the early 1970s and is sunsetting in 2023. Credits are no longer being, money's no longer being taken for the taxpayers for this program, nor is any more credits being allocated. So what's out there is what's out there. These projects must be within established districts, within jurisdictions. Those have to be adopted by resolutions. There's rules as to how big they have to be, and where they can be within arterial corridors or scenic areas, etc. And at this point, while you could technically do a new district, it would not be feasible to get a project out of it by the time the program sunsets. So in Capitola, the remaining opportunity to use these funds is really limited to district number 6, which I will get into. So the city of Capitola over time has had 6 districts. So through the early mid-1970s through the 90s, there were 5 districts with 5 completed undergrounding projects. And those districts have resolutions related to them that generally require that the utilities be undergrounded. Any future utilities in those districts are undergrounded, and everything that was undergrounded remains underground. And then all those overhead facilities are removed, which has happened with all of districts 1 through 5. So just generally, the benefits of undergrounding is improved aesthetics, removing visual clutter, really getting us to modern utility infrastructure, and then having those be underground often improves reliability because there's no chances of a bird flying into it and something shorting out. Really, the key constraints with this program that's quite involved, the large ones are things that are not covered outside the Rule 28 credits. The Rule 28 credits are to underground PG&E infrastructure, not necessarily any other utility infrastructure that might be on poles. When the poles are put underground, if your lights were on those poles, the city is, if they still want street lights, we have to install street lights. So really the credits are for the PG&E infrastructure only. Any easements you have to get to do this. A lot of times those underground boxes end up being partially outside of the right-of-way on private property. Obtaining those easements are the responsibility of the city. These turn into many year coordination efforts. And again, this program has a limited timeline remaining. So our current credit status is about 3 million credits, which is approximately $3 million. About $45,000 has been spent to date, which gets deducted from the program after you confirm the project, which we have not done so far. So we have 3.8 million minus 45,000 credits left for the city. They do take out credits for planning and coordination, so PG&E's time and also PG&E's engineering of the project go towards these credits. And again, the city responsibilities are those I named before, but also during the project, things like traffic control are also the responsibility of the city. So utility district number 6 was established in 2000 by resolution 3098 and then amended in 2019 into 3 separate districts. The idea of splitting these into districts at the time was given the allocation we had at the time. We knew we would not be able to underground the entire district, and you were allowed to divide the districts into that minimum size that PG&E allows, and these are the 3 districts that the city approved, 61A being that one up at Bay and Capitola Avenue. So the idea of doing that project, it was coordinated with a roadway improvement. And really, there's benefits of combined construction because with the roadway improvement, you are already doing street restoration, you're already doing project coordination, you perhaps are getting easements already. And so really those are costs you would have incurred with your roadway project. And so it makes sense to do that with your undergrounding project. So far towards that project, we've done a lot of the utility coordination, which is joint trench planning, where PG&E and the other utilities get in that same trench due to site constraints and that preliminary engineering. Since we're no longer doing those road improvements, we kind of lose some of those co-benefits of doing both the undergrounding and the roadway improvements. And so having a standalone undergrounding project kind of still has our remaining issues of easements. And then, of course, final project costs because no one really knows how much something costs until you bid it. So there are a few alternatives we have. Speaking to the other 2 pieces of 6, utility district number 6, there's 6A2, which generally goes down Monterey into the village. And when they made these districts, they did it on maps. They didn't really do it on field visits and connections. So in walking this with PG&E, it's really fiscally unfeasible given the credits that we have. It'd be more than triple just considering the retaining wall down Monterey and the number and types of connections that they have. The other piece of the undergrounding district that's potentially feasible is 6B, which comes down here, down Capitola Road, or excuse me, Capitola Avenue to City Hall. Issues potentially with moving towards that project is that we would have to deduct those costs we used for the Bay Capitola Avenue project so far. And basically we'd be starting this project over. So we would have to re-engage with the utilities on a different piece of roadway. We'd have to consider if we wanted to do a roadway project with these undergrounding and how that would be funded. And all of those kind of same issues remain unresolved. So those are the three options that council may want to consider this evening. That's one, continue advancing the project we have at Bay and Capitola Avenue, potentially moving into a project down Capitola Avenue. Also, there's always the option of discontinuing any project and notifying PG&E of that. I will say with either option 1 or 2, we can continue going down that road with PG&E, and at any time, if the city decides we don't want to move forward with the project or we bid it out and we don't want to pay the delta difference, we are able to tell PG&E we want to discontinue at that time, and you don't owe PG&E any funds. However, at that time, you've probably gone and gotten the easements and spent staff time. And so it's not a zero sunk cost, but it's nothing that we owe PG&E, like those credits and any kind of value back. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions? Great. Do you have any questions?
A question to our city attorney. I want to make sure I walk the fine line on this. I recuse myself from issues on the Bay and Capitola Avenue corridor because our intersection. And so I did not recuse myself even because this is regarding information about the underground district and give us information about that. So I would just maybe look for advice if council is going to start getting into questions and starting to issue direction. I probably I could request that it be continued, and then I can recuse myself from that further discussion if that's going to get into that, or what is your feeling about that? Because I stayed in this because there's other opportunities that this money could be used for.
Yes, that is one option, is that the conversation could be paused, because up until this moment it was an informational type report to you. So before it goes to a vote or direction is given, you would have an opportunity to recuse yourself.
Yeah, I might have strong feelings about the other two districts and stuff to have that conversation. So if this, so I'm just saying if there's a vote of the council that they're going to have the other two are completely out, then do we continue the item and come back at another meeting so it's completely transparent?
It's hard. I feel like it's hard to talk about all three without including the one.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
So maybe I'm just saying the way that the recommended action tonight was to receive the information, right? So we're receiving.
Yeah, I mean, we're not making any choices this evening.
That's great. So if we are.
We can make a motion tonight to move forward, right? I mean, that's part of also the discussion is whether we want to move forward to look at bidding the project to see if we want to keep going for District 6A1 to see how much it'll cost, because otherwise we will lose the $3 million credit.
Yeah, the agenda says we're just supposed to receive the information.
But also to provide direction.
But not a motion.
Oh,
Do you need it? Okay, so I'm wondering if we could direct staff to.
Sorry, I'm just like where the conversations are going to. I thought we were just getting information about the different.
Right. No, I understand. Yeah. No. I just think that I don't think that we'd be voting on anything specific, but if the direction could be that we'd like to know feasible, well, I guess we just went over that. I don't know. Cost or
Fundamentally, at the end of the day, we need to know whether or not as staff we're trying to use this $3 million for undergrounding district 6A1, or if we want to pivot to 6B, or at this point, transfer the money back to PG&E. So whether we do that tonight, whether we continue that to a future date, that's up to the council.
For me, I was actually going to ask for a little more information because, we've undergrounded the utilities up to the trestle on Capitola Avenue. And it seems a little odd to me that then we would skip a section where we have utilities and then do an intersection above that. We're going to underground those utilities. So for me, I would like to, I don't want to lose the $3 million, so we'll come to a conclusion. But is it possible to continue the Capitola Avenue undergrounding project that was started so it's continuous? That's sort of been my dilemma, because I think that's a much better, we get a lot more bang for our money and continuing an existing undergrounding project that we've already done, rather than just jump up and do an intersection because that intersection happens to be there. I mean, we've said we're going to leave that intersection alone for a while, so I don't. It does seem like we're going to end up making a motion or asking for direction or something along that line, not just receive information.
Yeah, I'm trying to just because I think we're still on questions and I haven't even asked my question. So I think we're jumping kind of all over the place. So
Yeah, that was my first question. Just so if we could, I'm just continue on. Okay. My next question is, the original project was originally, when it started many, many years ago, it was what, from the freeway to Monterey? Is that correct?
So if we mean by original, when this district was created?
Yeah, like way back when.
So
Original undergrounding.
So the city has 5 districts. For this particular area, it was the full, I assume in 2000 that the intent was to underground the full district. So that's from that intersection and then down into the village, and then to Councilmember Westman's point, down to a district that was already completed.
And then just by budget, it's been restricted down to just the green X. Is that I was trying to understand how we got down to the green X.
Right. So in 2019, it was subdivided into these 3 sub-districts due to a limited number of credits and what a size of a project the city could reasonably complete with the number of credits that were allocated to it.
Right, and then I know we haven't done a study, but what do we know? What this? If we have $3 million, is pink $3 million and blue $3 million and the green's $3 million? That's why I'm just confused.
So no, the minimum district is done by size. It's not done by cost. So they have forgive me, I don't know off the top of my head, but it's like a minimum number of connections, right? And at this point, those subdivisions can't really be amended. So they are very likely different costs. For example, the pink one, the one that goes down Monterey Bay and then down to Monterey, just given the knowledge from PG&E and doing a field visit, they know that $3 million is not going to be anywhere close to do that project. Obviously, construction costs escalate every year, so I can't promise that either of these other 2 projects will be under $3 million, but I have been told by PG&E that both of them are feasible.
Okay. And then my last question is, in this process, and I'm just going to say we picked the blue section, so I'm not talking about the one close to my house. If the blue section there, do we have any, if the cost, like you said, there's costs to the city, what would be we don't have budget for it, so what's the process that we go through as a city to then backfill those costs?
So that would be up to the city's discretion. And many cities do it with some kind of roadway improvement project.
Well, I mean, do you write a grant to get funding for that? I mean, or we would find it in our operating budget?
Oh, you can absolutely apply for a grant and tie it to some other improvements. But the time constraint with the Rule 28 still applies. But yes, could you apply for a grant to like fill that gap of those roadway restoration and whatever other improvements you would want to do? Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Question?
Yes. So until we bid the project, we really don't know the estimated costs for any of these districts, correct?
We have a better idea of this District 61A just because we've developed that further. There's engineered plans for that one. So the cost estimate on there is probably a little more accurate than the District 6B, but correct. We don't know the final cost until it's bid.
Got it. And we better estimates because we've done a lot of the work already. And, you know, I met with Senator Panetta and asked for funding for the Bay Ave roundabouts. Since we're not doing the roundabouts anymore, is there any way we can use the $250,000 he earmarked to help pay for the easement acquisition and the roadway restoration for the 6A1 project?
We would have to submit that to the FHWA. I would say that they would likely want to see that there are similar benefits to whatever project we proposed in lieu of the project we got awarded for. So this isn't at this point in the city a project, so I can't say if we would be able to write that or not this evening.
Got it. Thank you.
I had a question and it just fell out of my brain. Oh, maybe you already said it. I'm sorry, but what was the estimate for the A1 that we would be responsible for?
So again, we would have to bid the project, and it would really depend on, did we want, well, there are no streetlights there, but say we wanted to put in streetlights. So the estimate that we had for our entire Bay Avenue corridor project incorporated those in. I would have to come back to you with an estimate of what a solely undergrounding project would be.
Okay, I understand. Thank you.
A follow-up.
Want to do the public?
Yeah, I just have, well, I have another question. Just when we talk about cost, what about like Comcast or any, that doesn't fall underneath PG&E, so how is that estimated as a city cost too, or how does those costs come into play?
So depending on what utility it is, for example, AT&T is required by the state to provide service. So they have to participate in either a joint trench or form their own trench and underground their utilities on their own once the pole is gone. Depending on what the other utilities are on the poles, they may or may not be required to have service, and oftentimes they do negotiate with cities to pay part of their costs because most cities don't want to lose whatever internet service they're providing, even though they're not required to provide it.
My one last question on, have we heard from PG&E, is that a critical infrastructure corner to have underground for like reliability and stability, or is this aesthetics?
This, at this point, is more of an aesthetic project. So, no, like, we're not in a high wind forested area, right?
We're not having
or repeated failures or anything.
We're not having failures based on this intersection. This is aesthetics about how to make that intersection look better.
Correct.
Okay, thanks. Sorry.
Okay. I will take this to public comment if anybody wishes to speak. I don't see anybody, so we can come back if we want to discuss some direction to staff.
Well, I would like to have a little more information on doing Capitola Avenue, because I think that's the project that makes the most sense. And as you said, that one could be feasible to do. So is it possible for us to get a little more feedback on doing that project?
I was going to ask, what kind of information are you seeking? Just because PG&E hasn't done any of the engineering for this, I am not sure what utilities are in there, what kind of coordination that would be. And for PG&E to go and do that work, we have to tell them that we are going to go forward with this project. So there will be a lot of unknowns if council directs us to move forward with District 6B.
Can you pull up the options that we had, the 3 options that?
I personally would like to move forward and advance option 1 just because we've done so much work already. And if it's really just bidding the project to see what the dollar amount is and whether it's feasible or not, if it's close to the $3 million and we can afford it, why not? But if it's significantly more, like it's $5 million, then obviously it doesn't make sense. So that's what I would like to see. I'd like to see us move forward with District 6A1 and bid the project.
I support that. Is what would be, is there upfront costs? Or have we already gotten to that point?
So one of the last items we'd have to do is obtain the easements. So for this particular project, there's about 800 square feet of easements over 2 properties that we would have to negotiate fair market price with that property owner to buy the easements for PG&E to underground, put their underground facility on their property.
And there were no easements on 6B that we know of, or?
Oh, sure. There very likely are. That's one of the unknowns.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
We move forward on option 1 and then look into finding out what it would cost for the rest of Capitola Ave.
So PG&E won't do that analysis. And I don't think without having some of that preliminary information about the number of connections, what types they are, what types of utilities are, that we could make an educated estimate.
Go ahead.
Well, sounds like we have some agreement. I'd like to move forward with bidding out District 6A. And is that all you need from me?
So we would need to moving forward with the project. The next step for us would be to obtain those easements.
And obtain easement.
To be clear, those easements would come back to the council for authorization.
Great. Okay. Direction. Sound good? Is there any other input? Okay. Great. Moving on. Item D.
Yeah, I thought she said she was making a motion to do that, and
Direction is what I was understanding, but.
because I would offer a little different direction, but.
Okay. Maybe we can find some common direction if you'd like.
Find some common direction. I understand that, to do the roundabout, you had to underground the utilities here, so you've done a lot of work on that. And now, there's not going to be thank you, Julia. There's not going to be, roundabout there, but it's easier to, go ahead with that project. And I can see where sometimes people think, well, we've done this amount of work, so we should just go forward and do that one. But I do strongly feel that, as far as undergrounding and as far as aesthetics are concerned, we've done a lot of work through Capitola Village, and not to continue on with the work that has been started in the city and done with undergrounding in prior years seems sort of I don't want to use the word silly, but that's the only word I'm coming up with, because for undergrounding to be effective, it needs to be a district. That's why PG&E ask you to have these kinds of districts. And, spending the money to underground the utilities at one intersection doesn't seem like it's a good use of the money we have as far as continuing out projects that had been started previously. So that's why, I really would like to figure out if it's possible to do Capitola Avenue. I know it requires more work. I know that you've already spent $45,000 on the, Cap Bay Avenue intersection because you had other plans. It just seems irresponsible to me for us not to at least give some consideration to spending the money on Capitola Avenue, even though I know it will be a little more work.
Yeah, I would agree with that too. Option 3, I don't think we want to go there, but I think we do need to look at Capitola Ave and not say we're going to give up on option 1, but look into Capitola Ave.
I think it sounds like we have to make a choice though, because PG&E will need direction on which district we want to move forward with. And I have to respectfully disagree that, this intersection is really vitally important. The original plan was to move forward with a roundabout plan based on data, based on information, based on the accident history that we've been presented with. And if we had moved forward with the original plan intended, the grant funding would have covered the cost of the easement acquisition, would have covered the cost of roadway restoration. So it would have been a very seamless project. It makes sense. My concern is this intersection is still a very unsafe intersection, and an accident will happen again. And does the city want to be sued then? This plan that we have done all the engineering for and the design for is on ice. It doesn't mean that it will never come back. I don't believe that that's true. I think there's a possibility that this roundabout plan may come back in the future. And if this is the practical, logical first step into realizing that plan in the future, perhaps in 20 years, perhaps in 30 years, perhaps in 5 years, I don't know. I think it'll take an accident for us to really come back to the city to be leaders, to make infrastructure changes that will actually be beneficial to our residents. Then that is what it is. But I think it's really important that we move forward with the original plan to underground this intersection so that if and when that happens, we can bring the plans back from ICE and move forward with the project.
Okay, so we seem to be at sort of a stalemate. So I could try making a motion and see what happens, and we can go from there, and Melinda can make one, and we can go from there. So
are we looking for a motion?
Well, we've got to figure out a way to give clear direction. And
right. So, okay, and sorry, I do not mean to beat this up so much. So is there a way to figure out on our end what the easements would be on Cap Ave? Because we already know what's on the intersection, right?
Correct. So on Cap Ave, there's definitely a lot more unknowns. And just to be clear, PG&E will only work on one district.
Right.
Yes.
Oh, I know. I
yeah,
get that.
no, I know.
But I'm just trying to see if there's a way that we as the city can gain more information on that district in order to make a more informed decision on where the money could go. But if that's not feasible, then that's not feasible. I'm just trying to find some common ground.
Do you think we could call a quick break?
Mm-hmm.
Just check in with the mayor here really quickly, and we circle back as a group.
Okay. Okay, thank you for that pause. I think because of the stalemateness and the fact that we are unclear as far as a recusal process or what, I think we should continue the item till a further meeting so we can figure out legally if we can segment these things or how we can move forward, whether that's by vote or direction, I think we just need to clean this up so that nobody's making the wrong choice or saying the wrong thing, to be clear and safe for everybody. Okay. Sorry to be anticlimactic.
Can I just make one request that when we do bring back any of these future items, can we try to refrain from somebody dying, getting hit, and it making it look like we're responsible for these decisions? I mean, we are responsible for decisions that we make as a council member, but it just seems like there's a lot of emotion put behind it when we're talking about somebody dying, or it's just awkward and very uncomfortable to be sitting here and having that hanging over top of me. So just in the future, thanks.
Great. All right. Item C is continued. We don't need to vote on that or anything. Okay, great. 7D. SB1 project list and Measure D 5-year plan update. Jessica.
Good evening. This item is a public hearing because it has to be. So SB1 and Measure D are formula funds we have as a Measure D from a countywide half-cent sales tax, and then SB1 from statewide road funds that is gas tax, but it is tracked separately in the state budget, and we have to report on it on a project basis. Over the past multiple years, the city has used SB1 and Measure D funds specifically for roadway rehabilitation as part of our pavement management program. And then we've also coordinated those projects with ADA and other complete streets improvements. So again, this is based on the roads we do are based on our pavement management program. It was updated in 2022. We're doing another update in 2027. So not next fiscal year, but the fiscal year after. And there's a whole speech that I give on this, but generally it prioritizes streets based on its pavement condition and the type of street it is, be it an arterial, a collector, or a residential street. And so we are coming in on our 4th year of our 5-year plan. So of the streets remaining, since we are on our 4th year of our 5-year plan, many of them have been completed. Obviously, we have our 41st Avenue multimodal project this year, but then we have all these other projects in the queue that really cover the majority of the other streets left in the PMP within those other capital improvement projects, including the corridor study that we just spoke about, our Cliff Drive Resiliency Project, our active transportation plan, and considering improvements to our village streets, and then the Cliffwood Heights neighborhood project that we had talked about last meeting. So really, the outlier that's not in another CIP is Raposa. So that's a heavy rehabilitation project. That street is in very poor condition. The estimated cost of that is about $240,000. That was included in our PMP. That number actually holds pretty consistently with a recently big county project that they are currently completing this summer. So the proposal here is to use our revenue, our SB1 and Measure D revenue this year, to just do that piece of Raposa, and then holding on to the remaining revenues and combining that with the following fiscal year revenues to do a larger project. When one of the projects we have are more developed, we know if we've gotten grant funding, etc. So really that, again, more money, you usually get a better bid price. Overall, we can wait for our future grant opportunities. So that is the proposal. Again, we are required to do these by resolutions at public hearing because that's what the state and the county tell us we need to do. We have to report on what our intended uses of these funds are, but we are not held to having to do them. So if at some point we do get grant funding that supplants our plan, or we choose to do a different street, we are not punished in any way. We do actual expenditure reporting every year on how we use these funds. So that is my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, I'm dying over here. Do we have any questions for Jessica?
A quick question on Raposa. I know portions are in county. Are they going to do a project with us when we do Raposa, or is it
Raposa is fully within the city. Melton, the next street over, is partially in the county, but Raposa is fully a city street.
Raposa? Yeah. Thank you.
Anything? Questions?
Not a question. I just want to thank you for bringing Raposa up, and the practice in the past of it got flipped and everything, and it's drug on for a couple of years. I just think it's great that we're bring it a whole and to the point. And so thank you for all your hard work on that.
No questions either. Public comment. This is a good one. No takers. All right. Let's bring it back to council. Any-
Could I ask the council to repeat the motion and the second on the microphone, please, for the record?
Okay, I'll read it one more time. Adopt the resolution approving the fiscal year 2026-27 SB1 project list for the road maintenance and rehabilitation account.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Last item of the evening. Well, pretty much. We still get adjournment. 7E, MOU with the Capitola Police Officers Association. Welcome, Chloe.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I have a very brief report for you. The language in question was included in the packet that was published last week. Some background, as you are aware, the city has various employee contracts with our bargaining groups, one with the Police Officers Association. There is a long-standing program called the Career Officer Program. Since at least 1988, this has been in place. Participating and qualifying for the program does mean that employees receive an increase to their base pay. That language is included in the current MOU and again has been since 1988. We were informed recently, earlier this year, by CalPERS, our benefit and retirement administrator. I'm sure you're familiar with them. We talk about them often. They informed the city that the way the language is written in the MOU meant that that extra portion of income was actually not reportable to them to be used to calculate retirement for our employees, which was not in any way our intention, not the POA's intention. So we immediately took action to learn how could we correct the language so that it would in fact be reportable income. The language that was included in the packet has been looked at and approved proactively by the POA and by CalPERS, and I just need, we need as everything, your approval. So the recommended action is for council to authorize our city manager to sign a side letter agreement, amending language for the career officer program, and also adding language to clarify how we report payments towards uniform allowances for members of the POA. I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Questions?
Is there any payments in the rear that we'll need to make to straighten things up from the
No.
past, or is it just going forward?
There are no payments that are missing. This is something that CalPERS will use to calculate their retirement benefit to our past employees.
All right, thanks.
One point of clarification, we have been paying it and the employees have been paying for it since 1988. So it was always in our reported amount to CalPERS. They just came back and looked at the MOU and said, wait. No, it would almost go the other direction. If we didn't do this, there would be money owed back to people. Yeah.
Revenue. Any questions? I don't have any. No, okay. Any public comment? I don't see any. Great, we can bring this back to council.
Well, if someone doesn't mind, I'll make a motion.
Yeah.
Authorize the city manager to sign a side letter agreement with the Capitola Police Officers Association with a term of June 1st, 2026 through June 30th, 2027.
I'll second it.
Great, motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next item, item 8, adjournment. Thank you all for being a part of this. Take care of yourself and others.
Oh, man. I gotta get